This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian. I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
Look, some of us are lazy, alright?
If by lazy you mean wrong.
Prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide whether the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because guess what? This film is lit. At the beginning of the film, Tonks tells Harry we'll explain everything later. Surely they must not have meant in this movie. It's Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to This Film is Lit, the movie podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books, not the movie. It's not a movie, not yet. Unless somebody buys the rights to our podcast to make a movie of it.
That's very hopeful of us.
We're back on Harry Potter after a brief venture into children's literature. Well, this is also children's literature to some extent, but into our brief foray into
Picture books.
Where the Wild Things Are. You can go check that out. That was our last episode. If you haven't, if you're just around for Harry Potter, we're going to get into it. It's going to be another big, long episode because...
Oh boy.
It's once worth these big, and from 4 on, they turn these into, hopefully 7 will be a bit better because it's a 2-parter, 2 movies.
Yeah.
But these 4 through 6, they try to cram a lot into a very short amount of time in the films. This one's only like 2 hours and 20 minutes, the theatrical cut, and this is an 870-page book.
Like, this book is a brick.
Yeah.
It's bigger than some books I had for grad school. This is, yeah.
Yeah. It's, and so the fact that this is actually, like, shorter than Goblet of Fire and probably shorter than of the later ones. It's one of the shorter of the movies, like at 220, which is wild for the longest book.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah, but we're going to get into it with better in the book, better in the movie. The book nailed it. All of our normal Harry Potter segments, they're not necessarily our normal segments on the podcast, but there are normal Harry Potter segments, and like I said, we have a lot to get through, so let's get into it and start, like we always do, with Muggle Questions.
Muggle.
Non-magic folk.
Brian, Katie, once again, thank you for having me on This Film is Lit, Harry Potter edition. As always, my disclaimer, I may ask a really dumb question, just tell me if I do. I also may ask a question that will be answered later on, just tell me if I do. You don't have to answer it yet, I'll wait. First question, why did the Dementors come for Harry, seemingly seeking him out?
All right, so the Dementors came for Harry in the beginning of the book and the movie because Umbridge sends them after him.
Yeah.
It's not explained in the film.
Yeah, we find that out in the book. She reveals, unintentionally, I think, kind of.
Well, she kind of villain monologues, doesn't she?
That's true, yeah. That she was the one who sent the Dementors to try and discredit Harry's name.
Yes, because as established in both the movie and the book is that the Ministry is not buying Harry's story about Voldemort being back, Harry and Dumbledore, by extension, story that Voldemort's back, and so they're trying, and they don't want them to keep spreading that message, so they're trying to discredit them.
Yeah, they basically launch a smear campaign.
Yeah, and Fudge, I think, wasn't even aware that Umbridge sent the Dementors.
That's kind of the vibe I get.
Yeah, Fudge, the Minister of Magic, had no idea that she had done this, but he was very happy to try to use this to get Harry expelled and kind of rub his name through the mud so that people don't he's talking about Dementors in his town and that sort of thing. So that's where the Dementors came from.
Train.
But again, the movie does not.
Yeah, movie does not explain that.
How safe is Harry at his home?
He's at least safe from Voldemort.
This is interesting when you answered this one because I agree. It's not as
Dumbledore. Protagonist monologues this at the end of the book. He explains this. The reason that Harry has to live with the Dursleys is because Dumbledore enacted this kind of ancient magic when he was a baby, almost like a blood magic, it sounds like. So because Harry's mother died to save him, he's protected by that as long as he lives with her sister, Aunt Petunia, because she carries his mother's blood. Now, I'm not 100% on how this protects him from Death Eaters.
No, that's not really explained, and you would think that because it is implied that, and what Dumbledore says is that it's an extension of the ancient magic that actually protected Harry, which I don't know how much we've even gotten of that in the movies, that's why he survived.
Right.
Other than they say that his mom died for him and like that protected him, because I can't remember how vividly they get into it. But in the books, over the course of the books, it becomes very clear that this is not just that she died for him and that like somehow that love saved him or whatever, but that it's a very specific form of like ancient blood magic because of she was offered 3 times. There's even more specifics than what it first appears, that she was offered to not, to stand aside 3 times, but then she didn't, and that sort of invoked some strange ancient magic that Voldemort didn't think about because he knows all about all magic, but that's an old forgotten.
He doesn't understand love.
Sorry, yes,
That's
and not
whole
forgotten,
idea.
but underestimated.
Yes.
Type of magic, and then that Dumbledore does something to extend that onto the Aunt Petunia.
Yeah, and now maybe he's just more safe from Death Eaters there because they might not be looking for him in the middle of Muggle suburbia.
Right.
But
yeah, we don't know if he would be safe from Death Eaters. The idea is just that Voldemort can't touch him.
Right.
Who the hell is Mrs. Fig? Has Mrs. Fig been in the books previously to this point? I don't remember her from the movies. Was she in the movies?
Miss Fig has been mentioned in every book leading up till 5.
Yes.
She's not been in any of the movies to this point, at least not in any of the theatrical cuts. She may have shown up in like a deleted scene, but I doubt it. But she, for the longest time in the books, was just the weird, kooky cat lady neighbor who the Dursleys used to have Harry go and stay with whenever they went out of town or went, like when they go in the first book, when they go to, speaking of crazy cats, when they go to the zoo, they were gonna leave him with Miss Fig, but she breaks her hip or something and can't take him. And Harry doesn't really like going there because he said the place smells like cats, and she's kind of weird and just shows him pictures of her dead cats and stuff, and gives him like stale cake or whatever. But we have no inclination that she's in any way related to anything other than just being the neighbor until this one, when it's revealed that she is in fact a squib. But a wizard part of them.
Does the movie mention that she's a squib?
No, it doesn't even go into it because I don't think they've ever established what squibs are. I don't remember.
Yeah,
I for some reason these kind of exit my brain, like the little details like that sort of exit my brain because Filch is a squib and that's mentioned in one of the earlier books, but I don't remember if the movie brought that up. I assume probably not.
So a squib, in case we haven't covered it on here before, is kind of like the opposite of a Muggle-born witch or wizard. It's somebody born into a magical family who doesn't have any apparent magical powers.
Yeah. Yes.
And obviously very looked down upon by the wizarding community, and especially more traditionally minded wizards and witches.
And bigots. Yeah.
Yes.
What was the Nymphadora thing? Why didn't she like being called by what seems to be her name? Also, why did her hair change?
Nymphadora doesn't like being called Nymphadora because her name's Nymphadora. She kind of makes a quip in the book about how she can't believe her parents named her Nymphadora. So she goes by Tonks, which is her last name. And she's a metamorphagus. I don't know, because the movie doesn't say it, so we don't get to know how to pronounce it. Which is similar to an animagus, which is what Sirius and James and them all were, where they can turn into animals. Some wizards can learn how to turn, or have learned how to change their appearance into, like, without spells or anything. Similar, I would imagine it's very similar to how you learn how to be an animagus. And she said, but you can learn, but it's very hard, she says in the book. But also some people are kind of like born with it.
I thought you were born as...
It's both, because she does say you can. I'm gonna have to go look it up, but I swear she says you can learn to do it, but it's very difficult. But that somehow, like, maybe you can be disposed to it better, or that because she came from a line of them. She says, right. And so, but I think that it is also possible to learn how to do it, but that it's very difficult because somebody does ask her about that early in the book.
But yes, basically she can change her appearance at will. Although there's nothing in the book about her like hair changing when she gets mad.
No. Yeah, the whole thing where her hair changes when she yells at at Moody. There's nothing there's no inclination to that in the book. They just kind of did that to kind of make it stark and stand out, I assume.
I guess so.
I didn't have a problem necessarily with that. My problem with Tonks, which we'll talk about, is that they just don't ever show any of her doing anything else, like her. Because anyways, we'll get there in later segment. But
did anybody else see what it looked like dead elves in the Sirius house? Anybody notice that? What's up with that?
So the dead house elves are mentioned in the book. That there's like a row of house elf heads
mounted on the wall. Yeah.
Apparently it's all of the family's former house elves.
Yeah.
Although we don't really get much info beyond that.
Yeah. They just, whenever the house elf gets too old, they cut its head off and mount it on the wall.
Yeah.
And that's all the old house elves. So there's a nice little visual thing that they added into the movie for book readers. Right. Like, oh, that's what that is. But
although I can see where someone who had not read the books would be like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Just to go back on it real quick, Tonks was born a metamorphmagus. So
yeah,
she had it from birth. Metamorphmagi are really rare. They're born, not made. Most wizards need to use a wand or potions to change their appearance. So I was incorrect. But she says you'll have to learn the hard way. To Harry, because Harry wants to ask if he can learn to do it, because she's like, hey, you want to hide your scar, don't you? And he's like, yeah, it wouldn't hurt. But she says you have to learn the hard way. And she said metamorphmagi are really rare. They're born, not made. So I'm assuming she means you'll have to do it by like
you'll have
learning
to learn
a spell
like
or
a bunch
something.
of transfiguration spells or like how to get really good at brewing polyjuice potion or something.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the big main segment, Better in the Book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
I'm ready.
As everyone knows, as we do these, as we've been doing the Harry Potter series, this is the longest segment. We are both unabashed book fans. We've read them all numerous times, dozens in some instances. These later ones, not quite as much, but I have read 5 is probably the last one I read a bunch when I was younger. 6 and 7 I read, a few times each, if not, 5 or 6. So we have a lot that was changed and a lot that we have to say about that. And so this segment is going to be kind of long, like it was for Goblet of Fire. So let's
strap in, everybody.
Let's do it. Cut a lot of the Dursleys in the beginning. I don't have a problem necessarily. There's a lot they could cut from that. There's a couple little things that I think tie into some of the themes we talked about in terms of evil versus evil and sort of establishing more of the themes of bigotry within the world, both in magical and the non-magical world.
Yeah, casual bigotry,
that sort of thing. And one of the instances that is early in the book is that there's a story on the newscast about union worker, migrant workers,
a strike,
of migrant workers, and Dursley makes an offhand comment about this dirty. He doesn't say dirty migrant workers, but it's along those lines, and it's a very anti-union and a racist comment. Just to kind of reestablish that on top of being shitty to Harry, they're also just shitty people.
Yeah.
Which we don't really get as much of in the movies because we don't see. I mean, obviously, they're all always shitty to Harry when we see them, but they're on top of that, they're just awful people.
They're just not very good and not very nice.
Yeah.
I get why most of the Dursley stuff was cut. Arguably, it's a good cut.
Yeah, I agree.
We don't need it to understand the larger plot of this movie. But we did miss some really good stuff. For instance, part of what's going on at the beginning of the book is that Harry keeps listening to the Muggle news, trying to divine from that if Voldemort has been doing any like mass murdering, for example. And at one point, Uncle Vernon is like listening to the news.
He catches him
again.
Listening to the news because he sits outside and listens to it. And Dursley catches him.
And Harry's so sassy in the books, and he just comes right back with, well, it changes every day, you see.
Yeah. And it's good, fun little lines. There's a lot of sass that is cut out of this movie by a lot of different characters that they kind of trimmed a lot of, which is unfortunate because a lot of people have some good moments.
Mrs. Fig, I imagine it helps that we, as book readers, knew her before her introduction scene. Yeah. I also feel like she comes off as a lot, like, kookier and quirkier in the book, at least in that one scene. Yeah. And the trial scene, she comes through, like her character comes through a little more, I think.
Yeah.
But like in that initial scene, she's basically just
some random old
she's
lady.
Got
a
lady.
Weird voice.
Yeah.
She sounded like she smoked her whole life or something. But yeah, I thought she was fine. It's a little weird. They had to have somebody show up because they needed her as the witness and that sort of thing for the later scene. But so that's why they brought her in. She was fine. Again, when they cut a lot of the Dursley stuff, one of the things they cut is Petunia knowing about Dementors, knowing what they are. Mm-hmm. And also she gets a howler.
Yes.
So in the movie, we see a letter come that kind of turns into like a howler, but that's the one from the Ministry, which Harry does get in the book, telling him is expelled. Mm-hmm. But they also get a howler that's directed to Petunia, and it just says, "Remember my last."
Yes.
That's all it says.
And it's Dumbledore's voice.
But we don't know that at the time. We find that out later. We find that out at the end of the book. 100%. 100%. 100% we don't find that out until the end of the book. Because Harry goes, "Oh, that was your voice in the howler. Remember my last." It's just described as a piercing voice rang out through the room or something like that. And Harry said it sounded familiar.
Okay, yeah, it does just say an awful voice.
Yeah. Because there's a line at the end where Harry says he realizes when Dumbledore explains why he has to stay at the Dursleys, he goes, "Oh, that was your howler." Harry goes, "Oh, you sent that howler." He goes, "Yeah."
It was so long ago that I read the beginning of this book.
Yeah, we don't know that, and we find that out in the end.
Ago now. Okay, fair enough.
Because it's set up as kind of a mystery throughout the book. Like, what the heck was that? Who was that from? What does that mean? I mean, they don't really touch on it the rest of the book until the very end. But yeah, that is set up as a mystery, and it's a fun, interesting mystery to be like, what the heck? It wouldn't work. It would probably work a little less in movie form because it might be more obvious that it was Dumbledore's voice.
True.
Where for whatever reason Harry doesn't understand him or doesn't realize that it's Dumbledore, whereas the audience we might have. But I think it's really important. I think it sets up a lot for Petunia's character, which again, the Dursleys just kind of get neutered throughout these movies and don't show up as much and just kind of peter out as they go on, which I understand. We're more interested in getting into the wizard drama
and Harry's storyline.
Yeah.
But it is an important moment for her, and it's an important moment that kind of kicks off our understanding of what exactly happened with his parents.
Yeah. And the whole situation with him being left with the Dursleys and what that means and what's going on there. And so, yeah, it's a little disappointing that they cut that out.
Yeah. A small thing from the book that I really enjoyed that the movie doesn't mention, when the Order comes to get Harry, the Dursleys have left for the day. And this is a little while after the whole Dementor incident.
Yeah, it's not that night.
Yeah, the movie plays it as it's the same night.
They do that a lot throughout the movies. They condense events down into they all happen right on top of each other.
Right.
It happens in this one a lot because they have to. But
in the book, he's been there for at least a few days, maybe longer than that. And when the Order shows up to get him, Moody says that they lured the Dursleys away by telling them they had won a best-kept lawn contest.
Yes.
Which is the most Dursley-ish thing I can think of.
Yeah. And on top of that, there's been a thing because it's been a drought.
Yes.
So they're on top of that, they're getting this award during a time where they're not supposed to be using their water and their lawn should be shitty, but they are using their to keep their lawn nice and they don't even stop to think about the fact that they're getting an award right now. But yeah, there's just layers on layers there about how obnoxious and oblivious the Dursleys are to everything.
Moody also has a great line during that scene that I love that harkens back to our conversation about wand holsters.
Yeah, wand holsters, man.
Because Harry goes to put his wand in his back pocket. I don't know how he didn't learn not to do that.
And also, how big are your back pockets? Wands are a foot long. This drives me crazy all the time. A wand is 12 inches long. Okay. It would stick way out of your back pocket.
Now, I will say this. One, this is set during the 90s and baggy jeans were kind of the thing.
Sure.
Two, it has been priorly established that Harry wears Dudley's hand-me-downs.
Sure, that's not, it's dumb. The pockets are not that deep.
Well, at any rate.
Not 12 inches deep.
When Harry goes to put his wand in his back pocket, because evidently he learned nothing from the events of Book 4.
Yeah.
Moody says, "Better wizards than you have lost buttocks."
Mm-hmm. Yep. Also, in the movie, and I just forgot about this at this point, when they walk in and this is in the book, but then they retcon it, basically not retcon it, but they correct it, is that Harry says Professor Moody when Moody walks in. He says something in the book about not having, he's like, I'm a professor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I never taught school.
Or whatever. And in the movie, he calls him Professor Moody, and he just acknowledges him, and they just move right along.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's not a professor, never was a professor. He's just Mad Eye Moody, but okay. Speaking of Mad Eye Moody, when they go on their little trek on their brooms to go get to Grimmauld Place in the book, Moody does a spell on Harry where he basically camouflages him. He says you can't wear your invisibility cloak on the broom because it's going to be too windy. It'll blow off. So he taps him on the head, and it's a disillusionment charm is what it's called. And it basically turns you into a chameleon.
Yeah.
Like he just looks like whatever he's in front of, essentially. Which I get why they didn't do it for them. One, it would have been cool to see them do in the movie. Like, it would have been a cool effect and fun and magical. But I also get why, because they have the brief little, like, flying around on brooms thing, and it would look silly if it was just brooms flying, like just him on a broom. Like, I don't know. I get why they didn't do it, but I thought it was cool. I wish they would have done it. Again, on Tonks, and I mentioned this earlier during the question about her being a metamorphomagus. Magus? Yeah,
we'll
metamorphomagus. We'll never know. We see her as in the book. I say see. She is described as pretty much every time Harry or whatever interacts with her, she looks completely different. Not completely different, but
she at least changes her hair.
She changes her hair, different lengths, different colors. She also changes like the shape of her nose. Sometimes it's smaller, and that she does that kind of in the movie in like one scene where she like grows like a bird beak and that sort of thing, which she does in the book. In one, she's like entertains Hermione and Ginny by like changing her face. But there's one instance where they go to like the ministry, or where they're going to the train, I think it is, to go to Hogwarts, where she's an old woman.
Yeah, so
and we don't see any
like a completely different
a completely different person. I thought it would be interesting to see some of that, even if it was just because she is in the movie a handful of times. Even if it was like confusing to people, like who was that old woman with them, and then maybe they just didn't do a good enough job explaining based on Trevor's question. Right, they didn't do a good enough job kind of setting up what she could do, so that it would be weird. You would be like, who's that old woman? You might not put it together, but I don't know. I wish they could have shown some more of that. And when they get to Grimmauld Place after the flight, they get there, and in the movie, Moody just taps his stick on the ground, and the Grimmauld Place shows up. The buildings push aside, which is how it is described in the book, is that the buildings kind of separate and squeeze apart, and then Grimmauld Place shows up, which it looked cool. What I wish they would have done, though, because it ties into an old mythos that they'd already set up, or it ties into a spell and a thing we already know about in the universe, which is secret keepers, because that's what happened with Harry's parents and the secret keepers. That's the whole
we find all about that in Prisoner of
Azkaban. It turns out Dumbledore is the secret keeper for Grimmauld Place, and in the book, they hand Harry a piece of paper that says the headquarters for the Order of the Phoenix is located at number 12 Grimmauld Place. And when Harry reads that out loud in his head, because it was written by Dumbledore, he can then go in.
Yeah, now he's in on the secret.
Yeah, now he's in on the secret, and he can go inside. And I thought that would have been an easy thing to do. And again, it kind of keeps with a thing you've set up previously and expands on it. You don't even have to spend that much time with it. Like, it wouldn't take that much longer than Moody tapping his thing on the ground. Just have him hand him a piece of paper, and he reads it, and then there's one line where he goes, "Yeah, Dumbledore. That was from Dumbledore. He's the secret keeper." And then we move on. I don't know. Like, it just.
I think sometimes they make changes for like wizard aesthetic. Is the thing.
No, they 100% do. Yeah. I agree, and having Moody tap the staff is like cool. Like it's cool. I get that. It's just I don't know.
So Harry isn't as angry in the film.
Not nearly as much.
And one would have to assume that this is because we don't have his inner thoughts in the movie. Right? There's not like a voiceover.
Yeah, we don't have a voiceover explaining why he's so upset, because in the book he's constantly angry.
Oh, yes.
Constantly exploding on people, constantly screaming, super, I say constantly, it's not constant, but it happens quite often. And it's so much so that other characters start remarking on, like, please don't jump down my throat about this.
Most of the book. He's kind of, he's got a short fuse.
Yeah, and there's a handful of reasons for that we'll discuss later, or we'll discuss throughout the course of this. But... yeah, and it doesn't really come across in the movie at all. And like you said, I think the reason for that is because we don't get to hear his thoughts and hear his justification for why he's angry in the movie.
Right.
And so when he starts yelling at people, we'd be like, Harry's just a dick.
Yeah, if he was just constantly blowing up and we didn't have any means of understanding his inner motivations, he would be very unsympathetic to
and
us.
He already kind of is at times in the book. Even in the book, he kind of is, and we get to hear why he's upset.
Yeah.
In the movie, you get it a little bit. If he was turned up to the amount he is in the book, I think it would be very hard to...
It had been a hot minute since I'd read this book. And I was hoping that I was remembering that aspect of it as worse than it was. And I think I had actually remembered it as better than it was.
Yeah.
Because I was reading it and I was like, good God. But it actually bothered me less.
I liked it. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Which is interesting because I'm way farther removed from Harry's age than I was the last time I read it. But
yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I know some people kind of critique that about how moody, no pun intended, Harry is in this book. But I think there's not only several really good reasons for it. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think Harry has relatively good justifications, maybe not to the extent that he goes to, but like for why he's feeling the way he is within the book. And we get, when we're hearing his side of it from, again, his inner monologue kind of, and why he's upset. I think it kind of makes sense. And then on top of that, you add in things that he might not even realize and justifies why he's upset, PTSD type of things from dealing with the death of Cedric and all that sort of stuff. And not to mention, and people speculate on this, and you can kind of go both ways with it. In later books, being near a Horcrux makes everybody miserable.
Yeah. And
Harry is a Horcrux. So it's not completely outlandish that somehow that ties in as Voldemort comes back and his power grows, that sort of corruption within him, which is kind of what the movie plays to a fair amount. And the book does too, to some extent. So I think there's lots of reasons, again, that maybe Harry doesn't even realize, on top of the stuff where people aren't talking to him, people aren't giving him information, where he's reasonably, justifiably frustrated.
To be justifiably angry, to be justifiably frustrated. I think where it gets maybe a little bit frustrating for a reader is that he kind of has no choice but to take that out on the wrong people.
Yeah, and we know that Hermione and we know Ron and Hermione aren't the people he should be mad at this about. Yeah. But I think it's again, in retrospect, I think this part of what makes this easier or more digestible this time, reading it as an older person, you have the perspective to understand that that's how those emotions work. That when you have that sort of frustration and anger, it's easy to take that out on the people you shouldn't. Yeah. Because they're the people that are there and that you can take it out on. So it makes a lot of sense. And so you're more understanding of it, even if it isn't make it better that he's doing it. You know what I mean?
It is more understandable. It does get frustrating part of the way into the book. You kind of just want to shake him and be like, please. Stop yelling at your friends.
Yeah. There's a disagreement in the movie or in the book between Molly and Sirius about how to handle telling Harry and how much they should tell him about Voldemort, about what the Order's been doing, what level of involvement Harry should have with the Order.
Molly and Sirius really clash on this front.
They do very slightly in the movie. There's one quick scene when Harry first gets there, which is when the big blow up is in the book as well. But they go at it and scream at each other in the book. Again, it's funny because movies would generally, you would think, would heighten the emotional sort of, interaction between characters. But this movie actually dials it back on all fronts, almost entire, except for Dumbledore, which his emotions go through the roof. But to some extent. But yeah, they kind of blow up, and I really like that difference because they both feel. I like how it's portrayed in the book because you can tell they both make good points in the book, whereas in the movie, again, it's so brief and sort of just brushed aside. Sirius gets to a point where he tells them about the weapon that Voldemort's trying to get, and Molly goes, "That's enough," and then it just ends. And that is where the scene ends. Whereas in the movie, they argue before that conversation happens. And then when that happens, they argue even more after that and scream and yell. And we feel like they both have really very solid justifications, but they also both have their problems with...
Well, they kind of represent like opposite extremes.
Yeah.
Right? Like Sirius, and we don't really know this at the beginning of the book, but as it goes on, we come to find that Sirius really thinks of Harry as as
like
James.
a brother, as a friend, as James.
And it maybe isn't acknowledging that, hey, he is only 15.
Right. And that's Molly's argument.
Yeah.
And she even says that very explicitly, even in the beginning of the book. She goes, he's not James. And sometimes I think you forget that.
But then Molly is like way on the other hand of the spectrum and maybe wants to treat him like he's a little bit younger than he is and doesn't want to tell him anything.
Yeah.
You know, there's middle ground.
There's a middle ground here. Yeah. And so they kind of represent both extremes. And eventually they kind of do come to a place where it kind of works out. But I liked that back and forth and the different perspective.
They should have just let Lupin handle it.
Yeah.
He seems very even keeled.
Yeah. And just exasperated all the time. There's a little mention. So since Dumbledore is now disgraced, quote unquote, with the Ministry because they don't want to buy that Voldemort's back and all that stuff.
And so they're dragging his name through the mud. He gets booted from a bunch of
They strip all of his titles. He's not in. He's no longer chief wizard of the Wizengamot or whatever. He's no longer has his Order of Merlin first class, which we also find out in this book that can basically be purchased. Mm-hmm. I think when the Malfoy or somebody they mentioned that somebody basically just bought their Order of Merlin first class. So it's like you might get it for doing things. Because I asked this in an earlier episode. Like, what is that?
Yeah, we talked about it.
Yeah, you can kind of buy it, but you can also earn it. It's, it's just one of those things. But he's okay with them stripping all of his titles as long as he stays on the Chocolate Frog cards. And again, I think that's a little thing. That's to me, that's the aspect of Dumbledore's personality that doesn't come through enough in the movies, especially the later movies.
Yes.
We get more of it in the first two with Richard Harris as Dumbledore. The little moments with the Bertie Bott's every flavor beans, which we actually get in the movie where he tries, alas, earwax. The playful, weird, childlike side of Dumbledore that does exist, kind of almost more on the surface, where he's like super brooding and like, calculating and thinking incredibly.
He's thinking like 9,000 steps out.
9,000 steps out, but also very much a consequentially, like from a moral philosophy standpoint. He kind of weighs all this stuff. Mm-hmm. He loves Harry and wants the best for him, but he also is using Harry to get as a means to an end.
Yes.
And because that end is the best possible end for the wizarding world at large. And it's that conflict within Dumbledore that he struggles with throughout all the books that we get a lot of in the books of his love for Harry and wanting the best for him versus this is what's going to get rid of Voldemort and, keep the world from turning into an evil fascist empire. Like, so that, and, we get the moody, brooding, calculating side of Dumbledore in these movies a lot more than we get the playful, I just don't take me off the chocolate frogs card Dumbledore, which is a little disappointing that we don't get more of that in the movie. Sirius and Lupin, during the dinner, when they first show up at Grimmauld Place, are having a brief discussion they're talking when Harry walks in. They hear him discussing that they're trying to recruit the goblins. Mm-hmm. Because there's a thing where both sides are recruiting people, and this is mentioned in the movie. Eventually we find out Hagrid is trying to recruit giants, as is Voldemort, but Lupin and Sirius are talking about how they're trying to recruit goblins to their side.
Yes.
And they make a point that Dumbledore says, yeah, we should try, but I don't know if they're going to join us because we haven't exactly been very fair to them. And again, it's just more little elements that tie in to the overall theme of inequality and institutionalized speciesism, for lack of a better word, that are throughout these books that don't translate nearly as well to the movies. If for no other reason than Dobby gets cut, Winky's not in any of them. A lot of our touchstones for those characters that represent that don't show up in the movies because they're not quote unquote important to the storyline, while being quote unquote the most important not the most, but like incredibly important to the storyline in my opinion.
And doesn't that really reflect our own human bigotry?
Yeah.
Characters like that, you can make the argument that they're maybe not all that consequential to the plot.
Yes, to the
because
plot.
You can
Sorry,
work around them.
when I keep
but they are incredibly consequential to the
story
themes and to the messages.
Yeah. I shouldn't say they're not important to the story. I should say they're not important to the plot, as important to the plot, but they're incredibly important to the story.
Yes.
Because the story includes the theme and the message and that sort of thing. Yeah. And tying on to that is we see the fountain in the movie. When they go into the ministry for Harry's trial, there's a big fountain in the lobby, basically. Yes. And we see it in the movie briefly, kind of in passing. Yeah, and we see it more at the end. They don't focus on it. We just see it.
We
it
see
pans
it
across.
like in the background, but it never focuses on what exactly the fountain is, which is a very glamorous witch and a wizard. And then I think it's a house elf, a goblin, and a centaur.
All
like gazing adoringly at the witch and wizard.
Yes. And this is in the lobby of the ministry. The government building is this sort of statue to the inequality of these the different, I mean, not to mention there are no giants on there, whatever other potential, species of adequate it's I don't know how to say it, of adequate intelligence or whatever, of that are on the same level, because like giants to some extent are also probably should be included in that humanoid, I don't know how to describe it, as creatures that are also deserving of the same level of equality. They're not even on the statue, but the ones that are on there are all looking at the wizard and the witch like, oh, you're so great.
And that's a lie. It's a pretty lie. But it is a lie. Actually, if you read in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, in not the movie adaptation or script or whatever it was that they released, but the actual like mock textbook, there's an interesting portion of like the history of how the ministry decided like who had like human status and who didn't. Oh,
I wanted to mention also that during Harry's trial scene, overall the trial's pretty good in the movie, but I don't think it does Dumbledore's lawyering justice. I'm a big fan of when a character gets a chance to like pin somebody to the wall with like facts and logic. It's like, gets me going. I'm a big Star Trek Next Generation fan, and those were always like my favorite episodes when Picard, it's like, I like Measure of a Man, or pick your favorite Picard sticking it to people with like sweet logic bombs, for lack of a better word.
You nerd.
But Dumbledore gets to do that several times in this book, and this is one of them. And I just think the movie doesn't quite do it justice, how much he gets Fudge like blibbering and like agreeing to everything. He goes, well, yeah, sure, they're Dementors. He goes, well, then this spell was totally fine. He goes, well, yeah, but there probably weren't Dementors. He's like, I can call back my witness if you want. He goes, that's not the point. Like he's like, he just every time, and Fudge is just getting more and more flustered and more just like, but he always has an answer. And it's a little, cliche. I don't know if cliche is the right word of just
maybe a little, but
I like it. It's fun.
Yeah. And Fudge is very clearly not on Dumbledore's level.
No.
And we get to see that in a very tangible way in that scene in the book.
It's the same thing when we talked about The Martian. At the end of The Martian, it's competency porn is what it is, for lack of a better word. It's watching somebody be really competent at something I find incredibly interesting. And so like at the end of The Martian, when when they have to figure out how to get Watney, and they're all doing their different thing, and one guy's making a bomb, and their commander's doing this and this, and they're all doing this thing. I was like, it's so freaking cool. It's the same thing in this. It's a similar scene in this where Dumbledore so clearly outmatches Fudge in competency that it's really fun to listen to or read.
Boom.
Yeah.
Lawyered.
Yeah, exactly. It's the mic drop, and it's just it's very satisfying, and the movie has it a little bit, but it just doesn't quite get to the same level.
We also get to see more of the Black Manor, Grimmauld Place, in the book. There's one...
Do you remember this?
Oh, it's a brief mention. Yes, I do.
And now I want to talk about this, because I don't even remember if this is a red herring or if this pays off.
No, this pays off.
Okay, it does, doesn't it?
Does.
Okay.
It does pay off.
I couldn't remember, because okay, sorry, continue.
Because part of what they're doing while they're all staying at the manor before school starts is they're helping to clean it.
Yeah.
Because it's
decrepit. It's been empty.
It's been shut and empty except for Creature for years and years. So basically it's disgusting and full of like dark wizardry artifacts to boot.
Yeah.
So they're trying to clean it out, and there's like just this brief mention. It's just like in a list of random things.
It is. It's in a list of just stuff they found.
Of a heavy locket that none of them could open.
Yeah.
And then in book 6, that pays off.
Yeah.
And we find out what that locket is. Because I vividly remember reading book 6 and like getting to that part and being like, oh shit.
Well, see.
Oh shit.
I didn't remember. Okay, so I didn't remember that, obviously, remember that throwaway line from this book about some heavy locket that they couldn't open. And I didn't put together but there was all this internet speculation. They're already trying to figure out at the end of book 6, because it ends on a super cliffhanger where they get the locket, but it's not the real locket.
Yes.
It's a Horcrux, but it's not the real locket, and it's signed R.A.B. And everybody pretty quickly was like, well, that's probably Regulus Black.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that. But it sets up, they're like, well, that's probably Regulus Black because he was a Death Eater, blah, blah, blah. Maybe he turned or so, all the wild speculation on the internet. And then people also went back and go, holy shit, there was that one line in Order of the Phoenix where they find a locket that they couldn't open in Black Manor. They go, let's have the locket. So that is it? Is that ultimately end up being it?
Yeah, that pays off.
But how does it... I don't remember how it pays off. I couldn't remember if that was just speculation. I thought it paid off, and that was actually it.
Do you want to talk about it
No,
now,
we'll talk about it later. I forgot about that. Or I remembered that line with the locket. I was looking out for it on rereading because I remember all the speculation, but I couldn't remember if it paid off. I thought it did because obviously it does end up being Regulus and all that sort of stuff, but I just couldn't remember exactly. Where do they end? No, we'll talk about it later. It doesn't matter. We're reading it next. All right. But anyways, that's a little thing that, just a little scene of them cleaning for 30 seconds and then finding a locket would have been great, but couldn't do it. Didn't do it.
What are you going to do?
Percy turning for the Ministry. He's like in this movie for 30 seconds.
Yeah,
and
he's
they don't
like
even
randomly there, and they don't
end of the
mention
movie.
like why he's there or what he's doing.
People would probably have forgotten because he hasn't been in like any of the movies since like 1 or 2. People would probably not even realize that was Percy Weasley. Like
Probably
some
not.
casual viewers like would just some Ministry guy.
Well, Trevor didn't ask anything.
Yeah,
about
Trevor didn't
it,
ask
so
anything about it.
Maybe he didn't realize.
He probably forgot. I bet he didn't realize. But he's throughout the book. He's at the trial. He's all this stuff. And there's a big... there was a big falling out between between the Weasleys and Percy, because Percy, as we talked about in the prequel episode, his flaw is that he's super loyal to the Ministry. He wants to rise up and be this super important figure and rise above the station of his family.
Yeah.
And he thinks the way to do that is under the Minister with the Ministry. And he sees his family's support of Dumbledore as a potential downfall for his career aspirations, basically. And he doesn't even show up in the movie.
Percy,
well, he does, but
for lack of a better word, is a huge twat.
Yes,
in the book,
just a giant. Yep, absolutely. And again, he may show up in deleted scenes. I wouldn't be surprised, because if you're gonna get him and put him in one scene at the end, I find it hard to believe that he wouldn't be in a couple earlier scenes to sort of set up that.
Yeah, possibly.
You know what I mean? And it's probably just deleted scenes.
Well, and we know too that there may have been a cut scene from that.
Oh,
part
there was
where
absolutely a cut scene, because that
later,
continuity makes no sense.
No
Makes no sense. At the end when they get captured by Umbridge at the fire. But we'll talk about that.
To go back to the Black Manor for a second, we see the tapestry.
Yeah, which does eventually show up in the movie. It's just out of order.
Yes.
As to when we see it in the book.
Well, they rearranged a lot.
They rearranged a lot of stuff, which made it kind of hard for note taking wise. But we see it during Christmas break in the movie, but we see it before he goes to school in the book, and it's actually looks pretty cool in the movie. We'll talk about that. But one of the things that they don't get into in the movie that I thought was really interesting is how all of the pureblood wizards are related.
Yeah.
Like, Sirius is like, yeah, Bellatrix is my cousin, Tonks is my second cousin, the Weasleys are third cousins by marriage. They're all related because
Andy's related to the Malfoys.
Andy's related, well, yeah, because married into the because Narcissa is his cousin, right? Yes,
something
like that.
But they're all intermarried.
They're all related, yes,
which is
and
this
intermarried.
great nod to like aristocracy.
Yes,
which is more of a European thing than an American thing.
Yes.
I'll grant.
Right. But yeah, which makes sense for the story. Yeah, and I just really liked that, and it also kind of calls in because it lays bare sort of how silly it is that they all are super into this like pure blood. All the wizards that are into this like pure blood mania of like gotta be pure blood. It's like, well, yeah, when you're all fucking each other's cousins now. Like that. I mean, like that's what that equals eventually when especially when you live on a tiny island that's
right
the size of England.
And it calls back to, I think, in the first or second, must have been the second book, Hagrid, I think it was, has like a throwaway line about like if we hadn't started marrying Muggles, we'd have died out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, because they're all related. That kind of gets wrong. And more importantly, in the movie, Regulus is not mentioned.
Yeah.
Which seems like a massive oversight.
Yeah.
Considering JK was pretty heavily involved in the writing of the adapting of all of these screenplays.
Right.
I'm amazed
we
that...
mentioned, too, that she even went so far as to be like...
tell them to have Creature.
Yeah, you have to have Creature.
Yeah. It seems weird. Again, maybe it's a deleted scene and it got cut from a theatrical. Like maybe the script that she signed off on, it was in there, but for whatever reason, for time, they had to cut Regulus. Because, he's not mentioned. And I was like, he's like a pivotal... I mean, he's dead. He's not around, but like he's a pivotal previous character.
Right.
And kind of a important player in the story as it plays out from here. But yeah, just not in the movie. Whoop. This is a little thing, but Rufus Scrimgeour, or however you pronounce that last name.
Holy shit, is that how you say it?
I've always said Rufus Scrimgeour, but it might be Scrimger. I don't know. A future minister. Fudge replacement. He's one of the guys he's the guy who eventually becomes the Minister of Magic in book 6 or 7. 7? 6, yeah. Because Fudge gets disgraced when... Right?
Yeah.
When Voldemort, they all realize Voldemort has been back, Fudge is disgraced, he steps down or whatever. And Rufus Scrimgeour takes over, who has his own interesting character.
He's got his own flaws.
Yeah. From what I remember. But the movie doesn't mention this at all. Again, it's fine. Here's the thing. I will say this. Maybe he is in passing, because it's only in passing in the book. It's a throwaway line about... I don't even remember the context of it. I just remember seeing the name and making a note of it. But... it could show up in the movie. It could be a newspaper clipping where his name shows up. There could be somebody mentions it in the background of a conversation of another scene. I'm not saying it. There's 0% chance that it's in the movie, but it's one of those little things. And this is one of the things that the movies to me are missing as a whole. And we've discussed it a lot over the course of the books. It was what our second prequel episode was about, right? Of not world building, but paying off or setting up.
Oh, we talked about how the thematic elements show up early.
Right. I guess it wasn't.
It's a similar idea.
We've talked numerous times about how the little things that JK sets up.
Easter egg
planting that she puts in throughout the course of the books. And it's another little one that she did that doesn't show up in the movie. And the movies are lacking kind of in general.
Yes.
Is those Easter eggs that end up turning in...
Right, where it's similar to the locket,
yeah.
Where it's just like an offhand mention, like you wouldn't even notice it.
Yeah.
But then later on in another book, you're like, holy shit.
Yeah. That was
important.
Yeah. And yeah, the movies kind of lack that entirely. And I'm sure part of that is it's tough because it's, she's still writing the stories at that point, right. And you got to decide how much they're going to tell and how much they don't want to give away stuff for later books necessarily by being obvious with like, look at this locket. You know what I mean? Like, so they have to kind of do stuff like that. I get it. But again, the locket, you can do it the way they did it in the movie. They're going to be cleaning stuff. You can just see it.
Yeah.
Would be cool. And maybe in a deleted scene, maybe we do. Because again, it wouldn't be super important for this movie. So maybe they were trying to trim it. Who knows? We got to get these deleted scenes one day and figure this out. I know. That would be a fun...
We could do like a whole other series.
Oh, that would be a whole fun series for post Harry Potter one time. If we ever do a Patreon or something, that'd be great.
Okay, so this is something that has always bothered me about this movie. Voldemort in the train station.
Yeah.
Now, I get that it's a dream and I get what it represents, but it's so weird. Like, why is he dressed like an Armani model and like he's just like in the train station and then like he like twists his neck around and like what?
I'm not sure what. I mean, again, you know what it is. I
know what it is
because Harry deals with nightmares and sort of flashbacks and sort of PTSD type.
But at the same time, it's like we cut a lot of stuff, and yet we're adding this weird 30 seconds or whatever of Voldemort dressed like he's going to shoot a modeling campaign.
All I can think is that they wanted to get Voldemort in there somehow.
Yeah, I guess.
Just for reminders to like the dum-dums in the theater. Like, remember, this is the bad.
Yeah, all you dum-dums out there.
I don't know. Like, that's all I can think is that they wanted to have, and maybe just to have that shot for the trailer. That's a trailer shot. Like, Voldemort in the train station. You're like, what is that? Like, I don't know. I agree.
I don't know. And then, I don't remember what it was called, but like forever ago, there was like a parody video that like set that scene to Bringing Sexy back. And now that's all I can think of when I see that. I see it and I hear Bringing Sexy back in my head.
There you go. In the movie, Neville can't see Thestrals for some reason. He shows up in that scene when they're
not. Yeah.
In the book, he's not there when they take the
supposedly horseless carriages.
The carriages
up to Hogwarts.
But Luna's there, and she has the same line about, I can see him too, so you're just as sane as I am. But, yeah, for some reason, Neville can't see him in the movie. Yeah. Which is weird.
Or at least he doesn't cop to being able to see them.
Yeah, he just fakes it. Like, he's just like, I don't know. Like, he doesn't say anything, which is interesting. Because in the books, he can see them because he saw his grandpa die.
Yeah.
So I thought that was just a weird change. I don't know. I like the storyline about Hermione and Ron becoming prefects. It's super not important.
I like it too. I'm just okay with it having been cut.
That's fair. I think it would have been interesting to have it in there because I think it's one of those other things that helps spur along Harry's anger and his
frustration.
Yes, and makes it more.
Yeah.
Because the constant like everybody's like, oh, Ron's the prefect, not Harry. All right, and Harry's just like.
Well, Harry does cause a lot of trouble.
Yeah, he does, and you kind of figure that out. But I don't know. I liked it, and they just dropped that completely from the movies. Not even mentioned.
Neville has a weird plant.
Yeah, that's kind of shows up several times in the book.
Mimbulus Mimbletonia, which they show it in the movie.
They do show it.
I liked the way it looked. I have that in the other segment. But they leave out the part where it sprays Harry with stink sap.
I'm surprised they left it out because it felt like it would be a fun like gag scene and it's just the kind of scene you imagine from a movie because like Cho shows up to come talk to him on the train. I think it's on the train or on
it's on the train.
And right as she shows up, Neville has poked this plant and it's sprayed sap all over him that smells bad apparently. And then he has to talk to Cho, and it's sort of that, teenage embarrassment. Like, just, awful.
Like, oh, this is my crush, and she's seeing me in this horrible, embarrassing moment.
It just seems like it would be a really easy, like, gag laugh in the movie for a movie that's not particularly funny at times.
In a movie that needed a moment of levity.
Yeah, I think that would have been an easy one to put in there, so I'm surprised they didn't. The Sorting Hat song, which we probably don't ever see again. We probably saw it in the first one. Do we even get the song in the first one? Do we ever see it in any of the movies?
No, we've talked about that.
Yeah, that's right, we did.
This might be the only time I've ever heard you argue for the song.
Well, because this one matters. This one's important. The Sorting Hat actually has things to say.
It's important thematically.
It actually has things to say. You're right. I do hate the song, reading the songs. But no, I've said before that in the movies, I'd be fine with it. I don't mind watching things sing. I hate reading things sing. That's my issue.
You're right. The Sorting Hat does have something important to say. The Sorting Hat is a Greek chorus.
Yes, it really is. They really are, for lack of a better pronoun. The hat really is, acts as a Greek chorus, and it sort of reflects the mood of what's going on and begs the...
And offers commentary.
Yes, begs the audience to take heed and think about what's going on, you dum-dums. That's basically what the hat's saying.
Okay, so... I would never argue against Umbridge's iconic awful pink suit things in the movie because they are iconic and they are awful, as I said. But in the book, it says that she wears fuzzy pink cardigans over her robes, which I really think would have been just like a whole new level
it would
of
clash
awful.
so terribly.
Oh, it would look ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah, she does look bad in the movie, but yeah, it would be next level, like the cardigans with the Yeah, they really should have. And I guess they were like, we can't do that to this actress. She's already playing like the worst person in the world. We can't. Literally like worse than Voldemort. They do mention the skiving snack boxes in the movie, which is fun, with the Weasleys in their venture to become joke shop owners are inventing new things constantly. One of the things they make are the skiving snack boxes, which are for students to skive off classes, which I guess is a British...
Must be British slang.
Term. I mean, I've heard of it, I think, previously, but yeah. Or skive. Anyways, I think it's skive. Basically, that you could take this candy and it'll like make you sick in different ways for a brief time. Then you take the other half of the candy and it cures you, so you can take it and, I gotta throw up, and then leave class, and then you're fine.
Yeah, and then you can just do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's the idea behind them. We do see them in the movies, and they look cool. Like they like these big, fancy like candy box things. They're kind of neat. But the main one we see one instance of it in the movie where it's a kid who eats it and his like chin gets huge. I guess it's like some sort of swelling something. Yeah. And then we see one where Filch gets some somehow, I think is what happened.
Yeah, that was the implication.
And he has like boils or like pustules all over his face. But those aren't either of the ones we get in the books, from what I recall. The pustules maybe, but that might have been one of them. But the ones in the book is the ones where people throw up, like just projectile vomit.
There's the vomit ones. There's a fever one.
That one I think might have something to do with pustules. But
and there's a nosebleed
one, and then there's a fainting one.
Yes.
But the vomit and the bleeding ones was the ones I get why they're not in the movie. But I would have liked the idea of seeing, because there's a scene in the book where where the Weasley twins are showing them off in the common room by demonstrating the puking one, where they just like projectile vomit across the room in the buckets after they take them. And it's like, that would have been wild. That would have been basically the ones in the movie aren't as intense, but they're fine.
Another thing that doesn't really come across in the movie is like the insane like pressure of schoolwork in this year, because it's the ordinary wizarding levels,
which is mentioned
here, and it is mentioned in the movie, but the movie absolutely does not portray just how much pressure there is on these fifth years, which is another thing that adds to Harry's like emotional instability. Yeah. Is the fact that he's always having to do homework, and he ends up with no time to do his homework because of all these other various
things. He's in detention all the time. For a while, he's playing Quidditch, which we'll get to. Just so many other things going on, and not to mention all the other the other nonsense with the scars and the clumency and all the stuff he's going through. So the homework just piles up constantly, and there's this ever present amount of homework. And I think could be very relatable to people that are 15, 14-year-old reading this and starting in high school and that sort of thing, and getting a feel for getting a feel for the sort of pressure of academia. And it gets to the point in the book where there's mentions of students like literally like breaking down and like having to go to the hospital wing and all that sort of stuff. And there's just not really any feeling of that in the movies. The classes are neglected in the movies a lot in general, which again you get in the sense that as movies, you have 2.5 hours, and the story takes like the main plot takes up most of that.
And you want to show them doing interesting things.
Yeah, and going to class is not. Class. And not that there's that much of it in the book, but you do have lots of different classes and that sort of thing. And you just don't ever really get a feel for that in the movies in the same way. So, and the owls is the big one for this, and sort of the pressure of the owls doesn't kind of come across in the same way in the movie. It's a really interesting scene. It shows up in the movie. Again, they move it. I almost thought they cut it entirely, which I thought would have been weird. Where Sirius shows up in the fire. In the book, that does happen in the movie eventually, and we'll talk about that. But there's one thing that they do cut, which I thought was interesting, in the book that I wish they would have kept in the movie, is that I don't remember exactly what Harry says he doesn't want to do. But Harry says, I'm not gonna do that, or I'm worried about I can't.
Oh, it's when they're talking to Sirius about maybe starting the DA.
Starting Dumbledore's army. That's right.
And they're kind of like, we don't know if it's worth the risk.
Yeah.
And Sirius
being Sirius, he basically says, well, it's the risk of it is what would have made it fun to James.
Yeah.
And like goads Harry for like not being as brave as his father. Yeah. Essentially, like, and it's almost like this level of like disappointment in Harry. And again, this ties into what we talked about earlier, where Sirius really does kind of try mistakenly sees Harry as James and as much older than he is. You know, sees him as a brother, as like a compatriot, whereas he's a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And he got, it's like a real dick move, because he's like, not only does he make Harry feel shitty, he makes Harry feel shitty for like not measuring up to his father, which is all his father who died when he was a baby. Like that's like levels of like,
it's a super dick move.
Yeah, super dick move. And they cut that out, and I think it adds some interesting layers to Sirius that we get throughout the course of the book. A lot more in this book that are kind of empty, kind of not in the movie. There's moments of it, and really the biggest moment of it in the movie is so brief, and it happens right when Sirius dies.
Yeah.
Where he calls him James.
Yeah.
And Harry's like, what? But like that,
yeah, and in the book too, it's potentially a good indication of, you know, probably the kind of mental issues that Sirius
has, yeah,
most assuredly has after being in fucking Azkaban for 12 years.
Yeah,
immediately following the brutal murder of his best friend.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Sirius isn't the most stable of father figures to have in your life, and the movie doesn't really portray him that way, which again, you can kind of understand when they have a lack of time. It's hard to get into that sort of nuance in a character. Right. Sirius is replacement father figure. That's why Harry's sad when he dies. That's what he is in the movie. Whereas in the book, it's a lot more complicated than that. Yeah. Like, yes, he is a replacement father figure, but also he's got his own issues that sort of influence how he treats Harry and how Harry sees him and all that sort of stuff. So I really wish I would have kept that in, but again, I get it.
So there's the scene with Luna in the forest when her and Harry are talking about the Thestrals.
Yeah.
And I don't mind that scene. There's a lot that I like about it. The thing that disappoints me about the change is that in the book, Hagrid teaches them about Thestrals.
Yes.
Which is great because it's a moment that proves to everyone else that Harry isn't just seeing things, and he's not just crazy pants and making it up.
Yeah, which is important.
Kind of important.
Kind of important. It also is another moment where we get to see Hagrid's competency as a teacher.
Yes.
And as a quote unquote half-breed, as Umbridge would put it, you know. So yeah, I agree. We'll talk about that scene later, but yeah, I agree that Hagrid.
Yeah, it's a nice scene, but it doesn't do the same things that it does in the book.
Yeah. McGonagall. All of McGonagall's greatest moments are cut from this movie, and it's the it may be the single biggest crime this movie commits, because McGonagall is a truly great character, and she has so many moments in this book.
She is the motherfucking head bitch in charge.
She truly is.
Book. She has so many great lines that just don't make it into the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, like the big one that we both first put was have a biscuit Potter.
Yeah.
Which Harry, when he gets detention for the first time for telling Umbridge, which the scene happens in the movie, where he tells Umbridge that, you know, you're full of shit, Cedric's dead because Voldemort's back, and she gives him detention for a week.
Yeah.
She sends him to McGonagall in the book. She makes him kicks him out of class, says, go see McGonagall. And he gets to McGonagall, and he gives her the note that Umbridge gave him. And McGonagall reads the note from Umbridge, sits down and says, have a biscuit, Potter. Which is because he was like gearing himself up to be like...
Yeah, like get into another fight.
Yeah. And he's like, wait, he's so taken aback. And she basically tells him at that moment, look, I got you. We're on the same page, but she's fucking evil. Like,
yeah,
I can't.
But like, you gotta fucking chill, dude.
You gotta chill, man. Yeah.
Another one that I had in my notes was from when Umbridge is observing McGonagall teaching.
Yes.
And she keeps interrupting her.
Yeah.
And McGonagall wonders how Umbridge could possibly get a feel for her teaching methods and says, "I do not generally permit people to talk while I'm teaching."
Yes. It's pretty great. She there's numerous moments like that where she just she goes off on Umbridge, and it's so delightful.
Yeah.
And then one of the other big ones is that eventually they're doing career advice,
which gets totally cut.
Which is
from the
completely
movie.
cut, which is kind of weird that they would cut that. Again, maybe it's a deleted scene where Harry goes to McGonagall to get basically like, you know, when you're like preparing for college, like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
And he goes and Umbridge is there because at this point she's like super controlling everything. And Harry tells McGonagall that he wants to be an Auror, an evil wizard catcher, basically.
A wizard cop.
A wizard cop. More like a wizard FBI agent or
Fair
something.
enough,
You know, like
yeah.
it's like a cop. It's more like a detective kind of, but like you battle evil. Anyways, I don't know how much work they normally have, but because they have other departments for like misuse of Muggle
True.
artifacts, which you feel
so
like
I guess
would.
he's more like a wizard, like an FBI agent.
Yeah, they
or
go after like the
CIA
big, like the
agent,
most
yeah.
wanted criminals. They like go after them. But he wants to be an R, and McGonagall's telling him what he has to do, and Umbridge is like, look, he's not going to be one because he's you know, he doesn't get good enough grades. He's not, you know, basically she's coming up with excuses because she doesn't like him.
Yeah.
And doesn't, you know, and she goes, well, we're in charge. He's never going to be an Auror. At one point she says, Umbridge or McGonagall says, well, your marks in Defense Against the Dark Arts have been great. And I don't think we've mentioned Umbridge is the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher currently in this book and movie. And she says, your grades in Defense Against the Dark Arts have been great. And Umbridge says, actually, I don't know if you've seen my grades for him from this year. And McGonagall goes, I'm sorry, I should have said your grades in Defense Against the Dark Arts when taught by a competent teacher have been great.
Boom. Got him.
Yeah.
Fucking savage.
At this point, my favorite thing about it, at this point, they get into a screaming match.
Yeah.
McGonagall and Umbridge just start going off on each other, and Harry just slowly backs out of the room in the book and like shuts the door. And I just would have loved to see that moment in the movie of Harry just like, I guess I'll leave.
I'll just see myself out.
Yeah. She has so many great moments. And they cut them all.
Yeah.
She's in it a few times.
A distinct lack of McGonagall.
In fact,
in
the
this
one
movie.
moment she gets, Umbridge gets the best of her, basically,
Yeah.
where she's on the stairs and they're doing that film class 101 of like taking steps up the stairs, and now she has the upper hand. I'm like, all right. Like, we get it. It's visual medium. But in that moment, like, Umbridge basically like wins, quote unquote, and McGonagall steps down the stairs and is like, oh, and it's like, come on. I think she gets like one moment in the movie that I can't recall, but it's none of them come up to the level of the ones from the book. There's a really random thing in the book that, again, I get why it's not in the movie, but Ron tries to run upstairs to the girls' dormitory to tell Hermione something. And an alarm goes off.
Hogwarts is not having it.
Nope, an alarm goes off and the stairs turn into a slide and he slides back down. And again, that would have been awesome to see. Again, I get it. It's not an important moment, really. It's just a fun moment. And also has some really problematic ideas, some problematic implications for Hogwarts. But they comment on that in the book and say that it's because it was built in,
it was built in
forever
the
ago.
Middle Ages or whatever.
Yeah, and they didn't, because there's no such thing because in earlier books we've seen Hermione come up to the boys' dormitory.
Yeah.
So there's clearly no similar system to stop girls from getting up to the guys' dormitory, but that's because the builders of Hogwarts were, sexist, so. Okay, so we have our dumb Dumbledore moment in this movie. I forgot this happened.
And it's not as bad as our Goblet of Fire,
but it's pretty bad.
But it is pretty bad.
So there's when Trelawney gets kicked out, which she gets kicked out way earlier in this movie than she does in the book. she gets kicked out. Dumbledore comes down to save the day and says, look, you can fire her, but you can't make her leave Hogwarts. I can tell her she gets to stay.
Right.
And that all plays out pretty similarly. And then as Dumbledore turns around and is leaving this scene, he yells to all of the students who are standing around watching, don't you all have studying to do? Like angrily yells, don't you all have studying to do? And they're all like, ugh. And then he storms off. This again is it's such a departure from his character.
And the thing about Dumbledore that I think the movies on the whole don't get is that, as we've mentioned, he is the master chess player.
Yes.
And he is always even-keeled.
Yes.
He is in control of himself.
Yeah.
Because he is thinking 9,000 steps out.
The only time he's not completely even keel and calm, cool, and collected is in moments of the not gravest, but like when he storms in on Barty Crouch in book 4, because he knows Barty Crouch, or he knows somebody, the Moody who took Harry wasn't Moody, and there's some danger afoot. He goes into business mode. Same thing in this one where at the end when he shows up at the Ministry and is fighting the Death Eaters and Voldemort, he's in business mode. But when even if he is upset or it's never you don't see it. He is constantly
he is the master of hiding his emotions.
Yeah.
And the movie almost makes him like a loose cannon.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make any sense.
No, and it's such a departure and it's so against what makes Dumbledore so cool in the books is that that's underneath. You know that emotion and all, and sort of his over the course of the books, that's there because when we see it kind of come out and the fire in him come out during, again, business time moments, makes it so much more impressive when he's constantly like, "Rrr, rrr," in the movies. It's like, well, we know it doesn't feel as serious when like he shows up and is like going like, at the end of 4 and it's like business time. That doesn't feel as impressive because we've seen him angry and we've seen him in a huff and we've seen him
blow up.
Yeah.
So
why is this any different? And so again, it's one of those little moments where it's like it just so completely misunderstands Dumbledore. And again, he could not be more diplomatic with Umbridge throughout the course of this book.
He is always diplomatic with her.
Even when you can tell through reading it that he wants to pull out his wand and his fucking curse her into little pieces. Like he wants to make her fly out of the school. Like he hates her. You can tell. Like he is so not happy about what is going on. But he puts his fingers together. Which the book always made,
He puts his
fingertips together. He looks down at the ground.
He looks down past his crooked nose.
Yes. Then he glances up and he says something
half-moon glasses.
Over his half-moon glasses and says something serenely. Yes, Umbridge, or whatever her first name is, because he calls her by her first name, which I think is a sort of a passive form of disrespect.
Yes.
Dolores. Dolores. He calls her Dolores all the time.
It's interesting to me too because it's kind of a mirror of how he calls Voldemort Tom.
Yeah. Again, it's that sort of you're not worthy of any sort of respectful title. I'm just gonna
ignore the way you've self-styled yourself.
You're beneath me. You're lucky I don't call you Dolly, honestly, Dolores. So. Again, it's so disappointing because it's what makes Dumbledore so cool. Like, there's a lot of things that make Dumbledore cool and not cool, but like that, it's such a misreading of his character, and it drives me insane.
I'm so disappointed that the movie cuts Firenze.
Yeah,
I guess is how you say it. We don't know because he's not in the movie.
I'm pretty sure it's Firenze. Well, he shows up in the first movie,
right?
But I don't remember if they say his name or not.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Because Bane also shows up.
Yeah. Firenze comes to teach divination after Trelawney gets the boot. He's a centaur.
Yeah.
Centaurs are supposedly very good at reading the stars and the signs.
Yeah.
So he comes to teach divination, but not in the movie.
Nope. Then it's completely cut.
Yeah.
And it's another one of those great passive screw you moments of Dumbledore, that Dumbledore gets, because she fires Trelawney and then he gets Firenze, quote unquote half breed, to come teach this class because he knows it'll infuriate. For one thing, it'll infuriate Umbridge, which it does, but he does it very diplomatically and kindly. He's like, well, I've actually found a replacement already. And she's like, what? She's so taken aback. And that's the thing. In that scene, if they played that out in the movie, he'd probably be like, guess what? I already gotta. Come on, Fred. He'd be like, it's like it's way cooler if he's like, composed and chill. But yeah, no friends. And then so we don't get the weird throwaway line about Parvati curling her eyelashes so she can look sexy for the centaur that's coming to teach them.
Oh,
it's progressive, So in the book, they come up with the title Dumbledore's Army as a joke, basically.
Yeah.
They can't come up with a name. They actually come up there. It's the DA, but they come up with the Defense Association is sort of their first Defense Association. And then one of them says, I think Ginny says, we should be Dumbledore's Army. That's what Umbridge is afraid of, or the Ministry is afraid of.
Yeah, it's kind of a drag on her and Fudge.
Yeah, and they're like, that's funny. They all think that's really funny. So they're like, yeah, let's do that. They don't ever explain that in the movie. It just all of a sudden the paper just says Dumbledore's Army on it. And then at the end, the movie, again, the movie doesn't explain it all. And when we get to the scene later, it's just sort of, again, never touched upon. It's like Dumbledore's Army. And we're like, if you were watching the movie, you wouldn't really know why they named it that or where that name came from. You might even think it was somehow Dumbledore because he instantly takes credit for it in the movie.
Takes credit for it, and that scene is not as fleshed out as it needed to be. But we'll get to that later.
We're like halfway done with Better in the book.
Oh God!
So the other segment's way shorter as usual.
Yeah. Let's talk the Room of Requirement.
Yeah.
Because once again we have a movie that cuts Dobby.
Yes. Dobby is no longer or not in the film, which again
in
is
the
a
book,
mistake.
It's Dobby that tells Harry
about the Room of Requirement
because he knows that it's there because
he's a house elf.
He's a house elf and he used it to take care of Winky.
Yes.
One night
when Winky gets too drunk on butterbeer.
So the movie has Neville find it, which would be fine, except the way that the movie does it doesn't really make sense.
No.
Because the thing with the Room of Requirement is that it reveals itself to you when you have great need of it.
And you walk past a certain part on a wall 3 times.
But with the way it plays out in the movie, there's no indication that he had great need of the Room of Requirement.
Other than they generally say, Harry says in a voiceover, hey, come up with ideas for where we can meet.
Yeah.
And so I guess they're all kind of thinking about where could we meet? And then there's just a random scene of Neville walking by and then the room's there. So again, it's not really how it works. I have a mention of this in a different segment for a reason, but yeah, it's again, it's really a mistake to cut Dobby from this film.
And then Hermione just kind of like voiceover explains what the Room of Requirement is.
Yeah, she does. They're like,
which fair enough, because she's the only one who's read Hogwarts a history.
Hogwarts a history.
Although if it was in the book, then everybody would know about it.
Yeah, you would think, right? Yeah.
Like you would think more of the teachers would know about it, but whatever, movie, whatever.
Hermione comes up with some cool coins in the book that allow them to find or know when meetings are coming up. I don't know how you would really make that work in a movie. I get that, but I think they're cool. Basically, Harry changes the serial number on his galleon, and then it changes it on everybody else's, and then that says like the next time.
Yeah, so they all have like a little secret thing.
Yeah,
so
that if Umbridge finds it,
it just looks like
it just looks like money. She wouldn't have any idea. Fucking Nigel again.
At least there's some consistency.
Who is Nigel? Why is he in this movie?
He's just a kid with a super British name.
Just make him one of the Creevy brothers.
Well, he is in the book. He is.
Yeah,
the Creevy brothers are there.
I know they're in the group. I don't know why the Creevy I don't get it.
Maybe he's named after like somebody's son.
It must be.
They were like, "Happy birthday, Nigel! I'm putting you in a Harry Potter movie." I don't know.
Just make it one of the Creevy brothers. This is a big one, but also not. The Quidditch.
Yeah.
Again,
Quidditch
we've
totally
discussed this. I get why after the first and second movie. I guess the second. Whenever they win the cup, which is the third one?
There's a little bit of Quidditch in the third one.
It's like one match.
Yeah, because we see that's the Dementor.
Oh yeah, but they cut them winning that year because they win that year, and we don't see that. That's But anyways, there's no Quidditch in the fourth book because of the Triwizard Tournament. But yeah, it's back in this one. They cut it. I get it. You know, kind of be boring to watch all three. You can't show all three. Again, if this is a TV series, 10 part.
Yeah,
this book was 10 episodes. You could put one every 3 episodes. Sure.
Yeah, and it's not even a B plot. It's like a C or a D plot.
It is.
It's not. It's nice for character development.
In this one specifically, because Ron joins the team.
Yes, but it's not like wholly necessary to the plot.
No, not at all. Not to the plot or necessarily even to the themes. Things like Dobby and Winky, which are cut, which, you know, are important to sort of the themes and the overall message and the story, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. This is less so. But what it does offer is some character growth for Ron. Mm-hmm.
And another reason for Harry to be angry and frustrated.
And another reason for Harry to be angry and frustrated because he gets banned from Quidditch.
Yes.
He gets in a fight, him and the Weasley twins, well, one of them, get in a fight with Malfoy after the first game because Malfoy is being a shithead. Mm-hmm. And then Umbridge bans all 3 of them, Harry and both the Weasley twins, even though one of them wasn't fighting.
Like the pinnacle of unfair.
Yeah.
She's just like, oh, we better ban his twin, too.
Yeah, because he was trying to get to the fight, but he didn't. He was being restrained. But the only thing I would have liked to see about that is just watch the Weasley or one of the Weasley twins and Harry like beat the shit out of Malfoy. Would have been fun, but you know, whatever. And Ron ultimately, Gryffindor ends up winning the cup because Ron has a spectacular performance in the final.
Some character growth there.
And in the final match, he performs really well, and so they win without Harry playing. So, also Ginny gets to play Quidditch with us. And a thing that Trevor asked in the first episode: can you win a match, or can you lose a match and catch the snitch? Happens in this. It happens in the World Cup, but it also happens in this. In the first game or the second game, Ginny catches it, but Ron lets in like a bajillion points. Yeah. And so they lose still. In the movie, they're at the DA, they're learning Levi Corpus, which they don't do in the book.
No.
They learn like stunning and Patronuses and a bunch of other stuff. I'm not sure why they decided that was a thing they wanted to learn, because again, they don't do it in the book. And it's interesting because Luna does use it. Because I had this note earlier, like, why the heck are they learning that? And then I was like, well, Luna uses it in the final battle against the Death Eaters, but I don't understand in that moment why it's effective. Because all it does is lift a person in the air. And for some reason, that incapacitates this Death Eater to the point that they can't do anything. And I'm like, they still would have their wand probably and be able to like do stuff. I don't know. It's very strange. I just thought it was.
I don't know. I think you have another note here. Yeah. I think you're probably right, because with the brief moment of Snape's memory that we see James use Levi Corpus, and I'm almost certain that they included it just to remind everyone of what that is.
But it's magic. You don't have to set up every magic spell. That they don't do that with half the other magic spells in the like. They don't explain what.
Well, let me just.
They don't explain what Reducto is. That's for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. Let me just get the director on the phone here.
I know. I just thought it was weird.
You don't have to set up every magic spell. It's magic.
Like, if he points his wand and the person flies in the air, we got it. It's doing a spell that makes him fly in the air. I like the book sort of portrays Neville as way more competent over the course of the book than he seems to appear in the movie. Now, they give him a little bit of this in the movie, but it's like he's completely incompetent for most of the film, and then at one point he, like, disarms somebody once in like their DA meetings, and everybody's like, yeah, Neville, you did it. But in the book, over the course of the thing, he gets really, really good, especially it's spurred on by the escape of the Death Eaters from Azkaban.
That provides some motivation for him.
Because we find out that they were the ones, some of them were responsible for his parents' torture. And so that he's like becomes super determined after that and actually gets really good. And there's a moment where it's mentioned in the book that he like disarms Hermione like a bunch of times in a row. Like he gets really good. Like, and I don't know if the movie's ever, I'm interested to see going forward how much he's even in it. If the movies ever really portray how much of an arc he has from completely kind of the butt of a joke, incompetent to literally like as pretty much as effective and as good as the rest of them are.
Yeah, he ends up as just as good as anyone else.
And I mean, I do remember, and again, I don't remember how well the movie does it, but ultimately he leads like the revolution at Hogwarts in Harry's absence. When he
is the leader of the Hogwarts resistance.
Yeah, when Harry and Ron and Hermione are out chasing Horcruxes, he's at Hogwarts like taking care of business. And I know that's at least alluded to in the movie from what I remember, but I'm interested to see if they give him his due.
So we already talked a bit about Dumbledore and his character assassination in the movies.
Yeah, well, this isn't even necessarily character assassination. It's just, again, my thing of seeing people be really competent and good at doing things and how I enjoy that is that after Arthur gets bitten, after Harry sees Mr. Weasley get bitten by the snake, he goes and he tells Dumbledore, and Dumbledore jumps into action. We see some of that in the movie where he goes to the different portraits and he has them go off and do things, and then it just that it's always really impressive to me watch somebody that smart do that kind of like think that quickly and do, jump into action so fast. And we get a little bit of it in the movie, but it's a little bit cut short. And I don't know. I wish they had sort of expanded. They could always just make things more and make people look more competent in films. I don't know.
Do you hear that, Hollywood? Please make people look more competent in films.
Especially when you're adapting them from books where they are very competent.
So the book does a way better job of explaining Sirius's whole situation with his family.
Yeah.
Although Trevor has a question about that later.
Coming up here. We'll kind of hang out to that one.
We'll come back to that point. But know that the book does a better job of it.
Better job. It is a little thing, but the night bus shows up again in the book. It would have been fun to see it again when they go back to Hogwarts after the Christmas or something like that. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Somewhere around Christmas, they take the night bus to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And Stan Shunpike shows up for a brief moment. And again, I get it. Doesn't really matter. But Hagrid comes back from his mission. He's been missing most of the first semester in the book. He comes back in the movie. A couple little things that annoyed me in the movie. Not annoyed me, that were different. One, in the book, it's described, and at least from the illustration we see of him in one of the headings of the chapters, he is like beat to a pulp.
Yeah, he's pretty messed up.
And so they're like super concerned, and every time that the Harry and Ron and them see him, he has new injuries, and it's kind of the source of this mystery of why is he still hurt? What's going on? In the movie, when the one time we see him, he is like a little bit bruised on his face. He
has like a little cut. Like a little bit of a black
Whereas
eye.
in the movie, his whole side of his face, or in the book, the whole side of his face is like swollen shut. And I don't know. I guess, again, that kind of ties into this trying to write a line for like kids' consumption.
Yeah, well, and now correct me if I'm wrong here, with a rating system, is there something about like visible blood?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably. I don't know, but I would say probably. Oh, no, but we see it on, maybe you get like one, because we see it on Arthur when he gets bit by the snake. We see some, like, cuts on him, basically. So I don't know. There could be. They could have been riding that line. Also, they cut Hagrid's entire story about the giants. Again, I get that. But it is interesting. The whole tale about when him and...
Hagrid's Tale.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
The chapter title, which is a reference to Chaucer.
Is it?
She does that a lot.
Yeah. Oh, does she? Okay. I don't know my Chaucer very well, so. But he basically explains like this whole story about how they met the giants and they were talking to him, and then Death Eaters showed up, and then there was a giant revolt. It's really interesting. It's very depressing, but it's very interesting. And the movie just kind of cuts it out and has Hagrid just go, well, I'm sure some of them might.
We get to learn all about giant politics.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's interesting.
Again, it's interesting. I get it would be boring to sit there and watch Hagrid explain this whole story to them. So they kind of just trim it down to the last sentence he tells them, which is like, yeah, I talked to the giants. Hopefully some of them paid attention and want to come help.
You're going to have to talk about this because I don't remember what you're talking about.
There's a brief moment in the book where I think he's in class, or I don't remember where Harry is, but I just remember the description of what happens, and I thought I really wish it had been in the movie because it's a very striking moment where throughout the course of the book, we've been set up that Harry's feeling the emotions that Voldemort feels. Whenever Voldemort feels very strong emotions, Harry also feels them through the connection, through the scar. And there's one moment, and it's because of the escape from Azkaban of the Death Eaters, where Voldemort is super happy and laughing like a maniacal evil laugh, and Harry also laughs out this maniacal evil laugh in the middle. It's like in class or something. It's like somewhere where there's like people around, and I was like, that would have been a really interesting
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
like thing to see, and to see the other students' reactions to this. And I don't know, they don't have it in there. And I thought that would have been. I wish they would have done that.
The movie drops the entire story with Harry doing an exclusive interview written by Rita Skeeter, published in The Quibbler.
Yes.
Which is well known for, it's kind of like
it's the Inquirer type of thing, where they publish stories about like creatures that don't exist, like Bigfoot basically type stuff. Nargles and crumpled horn snorkax, and all these. Luna's father runs this newspaper, and they publish wacky stuff. But they'll publish this story that Harry is going to tell to Rita Skeeter, because they'll publish anything pretty much. And so Hermione's like, look, people aren't buying what the ministry's telling them, even though it's going to be in this this terrible magazine, because they fully admit, like, and Hermione, God love her, it's one of the reasons I like her so much, is like, she's like, none of this stuff exists. This is so stupid. But she's like, look, if we get in this magazine, it doesn't matter if it's in this rag. It's an alternative account of events that people aren't hearing, and that they, the fact getting it in front of their eyes is more important than the fact that it's going to be published in less than reputable journal. And so, they put it out, and it's, his account of everything that happened with Voldemort and all that stuff. And that's what ultimately gets people to start buying in. And
right. And the timing is good because, like you mentioned, after the breakout from Azkaban, people are kind of like, we don't really buy what the ministry is saying about that. So it was good timing for that, and it kind of really starts to turn the tide of like people believing what Harry has to say.
And more importantly, because Umbridge bans the magazine.
Yes.
Banned book week tie-in.
Everyone reads it.
Yes. Umbridge bans it, so obviously everybody reads it. And that's ultimately what makes Seamus, after he reads it, that's what makes him
come around.
Not because in the movie it's apparently the fact that he saw the Azkaban people. I don't know. He just all of a sudden is like, I believe you now. And it's like, all right.
Okay. All right, Seamus.
Yeah.
The movie also cuts the trip to the hospital, St. Mungo's.
Yeah, St. Mungo's Hospital,
where we see Neville's parents.
Yeah, and that's a big one for me. I think really was a mistake. Now, apparently, from what I've read, this was originally supposed to be in the film. I think they also realized that this was potentially a pretty important moment. But I think seeing Neville's parents in the hospital would have really driven home how terrible the potentiality of the Death Eaters are, and how bad Voldemort is. Like, you can say like, oh, they killed people and they're evil, and we can hear a story and see a picture of Neville's parents back when they were happy or whatever, but that doesn't drive home in the same way when in the book we get an interaction between Neville and his parents, who are in a psych ward essentially because they're tortured to insanity, and they're shells of their former selves. Like they seem to somewhat recognize Neville and his grandma, but like she brings him like and again, now I guess it's magical, so it has leeway in terms of a depiction of some sort of mental, insanity, or whatever the right word would be. I don't know how accurate this necessarily is in terms of like depicting that, but it's magic, so you can there's probably a little bit of leeway there. But like she brings him like a bubblegum wrapper and like gives it to Neville. And it's this really heartbreaking moment where his grandma says, because his grandma is a very matter-of-fact woman, and like she's very proud of Neville's parents for what they sacrificed and that sort of thing, but she's also like a very sort of hardline, like
she's an old soldier.
Yeah, she's an old soldier. She's been there, and so she's like, and she says something to Neville about like, oh, he's got 1 million of those. You can just throw it in the basket or throw it in the trash can or whatever. But Neville keeps it and puts it in his pocket.
Yeah,
and I think seeing that moment and seeing how evil what the Death Eaters can do is. And there's a lot of moments where the Death Eaters do get neutered throughout the course of this book, or the movie, throughout the course of this movie, where they do things in the book that we see that really help drive home they're bad. Like, you're telling us they're bad throughout the course of these movies, but we're not seeing as much of them being bad. And it really, again, it's a film, show don't tell, would really help to be able to see some of how bad they are. And that would have been a really good one, but we don't get it.
The other thing that we miss out on with cutting that trip to St. Mungo's, and this probably would have been cut anyway.
Yeah.
But while they're there at the psych ward, who should they meet but Professor Gilderoy Lockhart? Yeah. Still recovering from the memory charm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting scene. It's it's a weird scene. In the book, I don't know how I felt about it. Like, it's his own doing. So, but at the same time, it feels a little gross of like laughing at this guy who can't remember who he is. Like, it's kind of played for a joke, but like he literally doesn't remember who he is. And it feels, again, I get it. It's his own doing. Yeah. But it still feels a little weird. I don't know. I felt a little uncomfortable with it just rereading it. But it's not, what? All right. That's all I'm saying. I don't know.
Another thing that got cut, and I totally 100% get it, is Harry's date with Cho Chang at Madame Puttyfoot's. Yeah. Which is like a really awful little tea shop.
You just wanted to see it.
I just wanted to see it because it sounds super horrid.
It does sound awful. It sounds awful. And that scene is super awkward in the book. And I'm super glad it wasn't in the movie. I'll just leave it at that. So the scene where they find out, basically, over the course of the movie, since the DA's formed, they've been trying to stop them. Yeah. They've known they exist. That's not really how it happens in the book. They kind of know they exist to some extent, but and they're trying to find them, but it plays out differently. Ultimately, Cho's friend, Marietta, tells on the group. Mm-hmm. Tattles.
Yeah, she rats him out.
In the movie, the implication, and they don't explain this till the end of the movie, but in the scene we see, Cho is there, like when they like break into the room and they find him, they pull Cho, like they have her and she's like there, like, so like the idea is that like she squealed or whatever. I didn't understand what that was because like, wait, did she tattle on him? And we kind of ultimately figure out what happened there. But that whole scene, let's talk to you about the whole the room requirement first, and then we'll get to the scene where Dumbledore runs.
All right. So when they catch them in the room of requirement, in the book, Dobby comes to warn them. Yeah. That Umbridge and the
Inquisitorial Squad.
The Inquisitorial Squad knows where they are, and Dobby comes to warn them, and he's like, basically like, you guys need to get out. Yeah. Except he does it in a Dobby-ish way.
The Dobby way, where he can't, because he works for the school, so he can't just outright tell them. But they like blow the room apart to get in.
Yeah, they like have like a battering ram or something.
They use a spell, I think,
and then, and then she like blows the wall up, which is stupid. And it doesn't make any sense continuity-wise, because then in the 7th book, we find out that if somebody's in there, they can't get in. Yeah. Because, like, the whole idea in the book is that Hermione left the list of members in there, so Umbridge needed proof, so she walked by the room of requirement 3 times, or maybe she sent one of the squad members to do it or whatever, and lo and behold, there's your proof. The room of requirement has provided it. What? Yeah, that's what happens.
No?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes.
I could have swore they just because I thought they could go in there because when Marietta told them about it, they were now in on, they could get in there.
No, it's not like a secret keeper thing.
I think it is, because that's how how do the other members get in then?
Because the room of requirement lets them in because they need to get in.
I guess that was not how I read that at all.
Just
I'm believing you. I
just need to find. All right, so they're in Dumbledore's office. Marietta has ratted them out, and Dumbledore is trying to retcon this to make it seem like they haven't been meeting for the last 6 months, and tonight was their first meeting.
Right.
Yeah. And Kingsley.
Mm-hmm. Kingsley Shacklebolt.
Kingsley Shacklebolt is there, and he modifies Marietta's memory on the sly so that she doesn't remember that they've been meeting for the last 6 months.
Yeah, this is all the stuff I want to talk about. It's fine, but in terms of things I like more about this scene in the book.
And then Umbridge says, Miss Edgecombe tipped me off, and I proceeded at once to the 7th floor, accompanied by certain trustworthy students, so as to catch those in the meeting red-handed. It appears they were forewarned of my arrival, however. That was Dobby.
Yeah, and they all run out.
Because when we reached the 7th floor, they were running in every direction. It does not matter, however. I have all their names here. Miss Parkinson ran into the room of requirement for me to see if they had left anything behind. We needed evidence, and the room provided.
Oh.
And to Harry's horror, she withdrew from her pocket the list of names that had been pinned upon the room of requirement's wall and handed it to Fudge.
You know, see, it's funny you say that because, but he says it had been pinned on the wall of the room. To me, I know, and now I don't disagree with your reading of it, but I always read that as just when she says we needed evidence in the room provided, she just means we went in the room and there was evidence in there. Because the list was in there. It's not like, you know what I mean? Like they had the list in the room. So I always just read it as they just got into because Marietta told them about the room, they were able to just get into it.
Well, right. Because Marietta told them, now they know where the room is.
Okay.
Because in the book, they don't know where the room of requirement is. That's a movie thing.
Right. No, I know. I agree. But I didn't read it as, and now again, part of this is because I guess part of it might be informed by the fact that I forgot about the other extra rules we get about the room of requirement later. But to me, that wasn't, they had to then walk back and forth 3 times. My reading of it in this book, and again, this maybe it's a retcon in book 7, or maybe that was always how it was intended. I just read this as the first person who goes into the room does the thing, walks back and forth 3 times, the room, and then goes, okay, I need a place where we can practice Defense Against the Dark Arts. Makes the room. They go inside, and then anybody else who that knows about the room can kind of come and knows where it is, can show up and go inside.
I mean, maybe.
But I think you're right. I think you're right.
Get that explanation explicitly. To me, the key line is we needed evidence in the room provided.
No,
which I guess you could read either way.
See, I just never thought about it that way, but it does make sense. I agree that makes sense. That was never how I read it. I just read it as they got there, they saw the door, they ran in, found the list, because in their rush to run out of the room, they had just left the list there. And it wasn't the room providing it. It was just Hermione providing it by leaving the list there. But that was just how I always sort of read it. But no, it makes sense.
Well, let us know what you think.
Yeah. And I think
tweet us or something
with the information from 7 about how the room works added on. That probably makes more sense.
Well, I just think it doesn't make sense that they're able to blast their way into the room.
Yeah, it's silly. It's just
the movie. It's
the movie thought it was more dramatic, I guess. But yeah, it's kind of dumb. And then ultimately, in the book, Marietta rats him out, which then Cho defends her, which is what makes Harry mad at Cho and kind of is the beginning of their falling out. Among other things, there's lots of other reasons, but that's one of the reasons. Ultimately, this all ends up with them in Dumbledore's office. Fudge, Shacklebolt, Umbridge, Harry, Hermione. I think Hermione's there. Maybe not. Yeah, I think she is. And Marietta are there in the book. Kingsley, they start. I like the way the scene plays out in the book because it's this: how the heck are they going to get out of this situation? They are caught.
Yes.
Especially because Marietta's there, but in the book she won't. Hermione did a little slick piece of jinxing on the list that they all signed, where if any of them tattles basically, they get jinxed where it says sneak across their face. And Marietta's super embarrassed by this. And so she like won't talk and like show her face. And then during that time, again, the thing you talked about where Dumbledore plays it up like this is their first meeting and they never actually met. And when they talked about this, again, some more of the lawyering of Dumbledore where, oh, well, when you saw them in the Hogshead talking about doing this, it wasn't illegal at the time. Right. So, you know, they weren't breaking the rules then. It wasn't until after that. And they go, well, yeah, but all the meetings since then. And he goes, well, have you any evidence that they were doing those meetings? And, you know, back and forth. All that plays out is really interesting how that all progresses. Whereas in the movie, it's just immediately they walk in, they have the piece of paper, and they're like, Dumbledore's army. And Dumbledore's like, you got me. And then the scene is like, you know, and then the end of the scene happens. I like the slow burn and the sort of figuring it out and kind of working their way through the situation in the book.
We get to see Dumbledore like really think on his feet.
Yeah. And Kingsley, because, yeah, like you said, Shacklebolt affects Marietta's memory so that she starts saying, no, we never met before. Yeah. No, I don't remember meeting any other times. And then ultimately it ends with with Dumbledore, the Great Line, which we'll talk about later, but making his escape. It looks okay in the movie, but I really like the moment in the book where he knocks everybody down, or he does a spell that like knocks everybody out. Or doesn't knock everybody out because he's better than that. It knocks out Umbridge, Fudge, Shacklebolt, and the other R who's there. Dawlish, who's a Death Eater, I think, if I remember correctly. Knocks them out, but then he comes over to McGonagall and Harry and them and is like, they're going to think this all happened instantaneously. So when I'm gone, just like he like gives them a quick briefing. He's like, I'm going to leave. You guys get the heck out of here. McGonagall's going to cover for all this. And then when they wake up, you got to be like, oh, what happened? Like, this is interesting. And I wish that played out more similarly in the movie. Wow, we talked about that scene for way too long. Let's move on.
I don't know. This is probably something we're going to talk about for a
long
time again.
Oh, gosh.
So the movie doesn't have Harry look into Snape's pensieve.
No. So when Snape starts teaching Harry occlumency, happens in the book. In the book, he puts some of his memories into a pensieve so that Harry can't, if Harry does defend himself, he can't get into Snape's mind and see anything that he doesn't want him to see. Yeah. Ultimately, what happens is that Snape has something happen. Snape leaves and leaves the pensieve there, and Harry, curiosity gets the better of him, and he looks into it and sees the memory of his dad picking on Snape, basically. One of the things they drop from that scene is that Lily is in it in the book. She's not in it in the movie, which I think is a really big mistake because it's there's a lot of, I think it was a mistake showing us at all in the movie because they never address it.
Yeah, because they never do anything with it.
They never do anything with it in the movie, which is really weird because in the book, this is a big emotional moment for Harry because he everything he thought he knew about his dad is completely upended.
Suddenly seems untrue.
Yes, because he sees his dad mercilessly picking on Snape for no reason that he can see in this instance. Snape doesn't provoke him in any way. They basically are just bored and are like, let's go pick on that kid. Yeah. And now there's obviously history there, but it's just like because they were bored, they go pick on him, and Harry's like, wow, my dad was a bully. Like, what the heck? And on top of that, Lily in the memory seemingly can't stand James, and so Harry's even gets to the point where he's like, did my dad force her to did he use a love, but what happened? How did they end up married a few years after this? Because she hates him, she can't stand him. And it's a kind of a big emotional maturity moment for Harry and sort of dealing with role models, and it also kind of parallels the fact that he also sees Dumbledore as a father figure and Sirius as a father figure, and all these people have lots of flaws, and it's sort of dealing with the flaws in your father figures.
He tends to see his father figures as infallible.
Yes.
Which a lot of people do.
A lot of people do, yeah.
Yeah. But, this is really the book where he starts to get that inkling of these people actually have flaws. They aren't infallible.
The world isn't split into good people and Death Eaters.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he starts to see that, but again, and so they show us that in the movie, but then they never do anything with it. Yeah, he never has any.
They show in the book it's a drawn out scene. They show 20 seconds of it in the movie.
Yeah, it's very brief, just him picking on Snape. And then again, more importantly, they never come back to it. Never have a conversation about it.
Never address it.
It's probably in a deleted scene. You know, there's probably a moment between Sirius and him where they discuss it. But it's like, why even show us that if you're never going to have Harry confront it or address it? Because it's pointless then.
This is also the inciting incident that makes Snape refuse to continue lessons with him. Which it makes less sense to me in the movie because in the book, Harry's kind of like being a little shit and he looks in the pen.
He's actively doing something he shouldn't be doing.
And he knows that he shouldn't be doing it, but he does it anyway. In the movie,
it's like an accident.
It's more like, it's an accident, and it's more like he was doing the thing that you wanted him to do. Yeah. So what's your problem, bro?
Yeah, I mean, I still get it in the sense that it's the movie portrays it as Snape acting completely out of just like embarrassment. Yeah. You know, which is still kind of what it is in the book, but there's also, at least it's a little more justified. His anger in the book is a little more justified because it's Harry did, you know, do something he shouldn't have. He did violate Snape's privacy. Yeah. Hagrid gets kicked out in the book. He actually does get canned by McGonagall or by Umbridge, which they tease it in the movie, but it never actually happens. Again, maybe it's a deleted scene. But in the book, there's a really great moment during Owls. I say great, it's crazy, but this happens in like every book where Hagrid gets a moment to be a badass, and they never show it in the movie. And so we had him choking Karkaroff in the last one. We don't have that in this one. McGonagall and I assume maybe like Dawlish or some of the Inquisitors. We don't know who is with her, but like 4 or 5 wizards of some sort go with her in the middle of the night to kick out
Umbridge.
Sorry, not McGonagall. Yeah. Go with Umbridge to kick Hagrid out in the middle of the night. Yeah. And they get there and there's a scrum and they start fighting, and Hagrid just starts beating the shit out of all these wizards, and they're shooting spells at him and they're just bouncing off of him. Yeah. I swear we don't ever see that in the movies, which is so like, why would you not have that? I mean, he gets to be the Incredible Hulk, and you're not going to put that in your movie. Like, yeah, he spells bounce off of him, and he like picks up people and throws them across rooms or across the field. It would be really cool to see, and they don't include it at all. And then on top of that, at the end of that, McGonagall comes out to try to like, you know, calm this action or the situation down, and as soon as she walks out of the doors, she gets hit with 4 stunners, like stun spells. And she's like an old ass woman, and she like immediately crumples. Yeah. Or gets knocked back off of her feet. And so she ends up going to the hospital because she has to recover.
To leave Hogwarts which is a plot point later.
Yes. Yeah, because ultimately, when we find out that Sirius is potentially captured, or, you know, is being held prisoner and tortured, Harry's like, hey, I got to find somebody from the Order. And he's like, okay, Dumbledore's not here. McGonagall's not here because they're all in the Order. I guess we don't know McGonagall's in the Order in the films. That's never, I guess. At least in this film, she's never at Grimmauld Place that we see. So, but McGonagall's in the Order. But he can't tell McGonagall she's in the hospital. Don't go to Dumbledore. He can't go to Hagrid because he's gone. Again, he could go to Hagrid. Like none of the people you would normally go to in the book. He has no options.
Yeah, he has no options, which is why he ends up trying to contact Sirius,
go to the fire and try to talk. Yeah, which is why he does that, because otherwise he could just go to McGonagall and they could sort it out. So her not being gone, it kind of, or Hagrid kind of
it makes some
a plot hole there. But again, if they never illustrate that those people are in, we don't know in the film that he could go to them because we don't know that they're in the Order. But I mean, I guess you could.
Well, we know Hagrid was doing stuff for the Order.
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay, we talked about this earlier, but so when they go to the fire. So basically, Hagrid or Sirius or, my mind is melting at this point. Harry has the vision of Sirius in being tortured, and he's like, they're gonna kill him. We have to go save him. But they want to confirm that it's actually Hermione's like, it could be fake. We should check it out. And so he goes to the Umbridge's fire because it's not being monitored, which is similar in the book. But in the movie, this makes no sense. So they catch him in the fire, which is what happens in the book. But in the book, we set up that Ginny, Luna, and not Neville, actually, but Ginny and Luna are helping. Yeah. And maybe Neville is too. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. They're all helping Harry as like lookouts and part of the plot. They're helping kind of cause a distraction so that Harry can get into her office and look and use the fire. And so that's why they all get captured and end up together. In the movie, it's just Harry, Hermione, and Ron run into her office because she's being distracted by the Weasleys or whatever just happened with that. And then she comes in and grabs them, but then also for some reason, Ginny...
Yeah, there's like a cut.
And Luna and Neville are there. And Malfoy says, I found the Longbottom trying to help Jenny or something. But we're like, do what?
Yeah.
We didn't see why are they like, there's no reason for them to have been caught or because they were not involved in anything that was going on in the movie. It's a continuity error that makes literally no sense.
Yeah.
But they just had to figure out a way to do it. Again, maybe there's a deleted scene that makes it make sense, but boy, that was weird.
Gotta be a delete. There has to be
because it just makes no sense. Also, there's a weird mention that Cho confessed under Veritaserum. Like that's why, and so like that's kind of like the big revelation to like Harry and them. Like, oh, you guys were mad at Cho, but all along she didn't. It wasn't like her choice. You know, she had truth serum. But in the book, it's Snape as a member of the Order has not been giving Umbridge real Veritaserum all year.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want her getting the truth out of Harry and them about... Because she's like tries to interrogate Harry at one point in the book and give him Veritaserum, and he smartly realizes I shouldn't drink this tea.
Yeah, he doesn't drink the tea.
But it's like... The movie's like, okay, well, so then he did give him real Veritaserum, but if he did that, if Snape gave Umbridge real Veritaserum that worked on Cho... If Umbridge had used it on Harry, she could have found out where the Order of the Phoenix was. It could have ruined everything. So that can't possibly have that. That's one of those little things where it's the movie.
It's like
misunderstands.
Where it's like whoever was adapting it didn't
put the pieces together
and didn't understand what was happening there.
Yeah. As like you that no. Okay, fine. Okay, cool. There's no setup for the centaurs. We see them earlier in the book, and then they just kind of show up at the end, and they don't say a word when they take Umbridge away.
Basically, no setup for how the centaurs are feeling.
No, or why? Yeah,
is shat upon, and now at the end here we just get. Oh, hey, Umbridge is a bigot.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is that Umbridge, we don't get nearly as much of a setup for how much of a bigot Umbridge is in the movie. We have a couple little moments, but they're like throughout the course of one of our first introductions to her, she says she has a line about half-breeds, and it becomes very clear very quickly, oh, that's the kind of person you are.
Yeah.
And numerous recurring elements of that throughout where, half-breeds and non-human creatures and
gross language.
Yeah. And so we realize, oh, you're a bigot. And so then when she runs into the centaurs at the end and she starts insulting them and saying they have near human intelligence and all this stuff, it makes sense. And we're like, oh, okay. But we don't get that setup. So it feels kind of like.
Yeah. it's not completely out of left field. No, because
it still fits with their character. It's just.
But it's still like. To me, the fact that there's little to no setup for why the centaurs are upset is the bigger sin.
Yeah. They just show up and they're like...
fuck you, grunt.
Yeah. It's weird. They completely kind of just neuter the complexity of what's going on with...
Yeah, the movie really neuters their complexity, which is also kind of problematic in another way.
Yeah.
Because the movie makes a very clear, it very clearly aligns them with First Nations people.
Yeah.
Because it makes a reference to how the government limits what land they can live on.
That's in the book for sure. Is it in the movie?
It's mentioned in the book somewhere, but it is in the movie because I noticed it.
Okay.
Because Umbridge says something about the ministry allows you to live.
They're very much a First Nations implication there.
So it is.
Yeah, it's problematic to not have them say anything and just be like, whoa.
Yeah, to just have
shoot
them
arrows at you.
And shooting arrows.
Yeah. It's a fair point. Oh, there's a little thing, but when they're flying to the ministry, they've taken Thestrals, and as we know, the Thestrals can only be seen by people who have seen people die, and so the only people who can see them are Luna, Neville, and Harry, and it's mentioned in the book that they have to help everybody else get on the Thestrals, and I thought that just the people getting on Thestrals who can't see them would have been a fun scene to see. Maybe a little moment of levity in this like breakneck, terrifying, finale of this film. But yeah, whatever. I get it.
That would be terrifying.
This is a big one. This is a huge one, and I can't believe they cut it. I'm not even joking. It's tiny, but it's huge. When they get to the ministry, they go through the visitor's entrance, and when you do that, you go into the receiver, and they don't show this at any point. You go into the receiver, and the receiver says, hey, what's your business here at the ministry? And you say, like in the beginning, Arthur says, Arthur Weasley and Harry Potter trial or something like that. It says why they're there. And when they get there to go try to rescue Sirius, the 7 of them get there, or 6 of them, and Harry goes into the receiver and they say, well, what's your business? And he says, Harry Potter, and he lists everybody off. And he says, we're here to save my godfather.
Save someone
we're here to save my godfather. We're here to save someone. And so they give the name tag, basically, and the name tags come out, and Harry Potter picks it up, and it says, Harry Potter Rescue Mission. And that's I love it. And it's like that's a Marvel movie joke. written in 2005 or whenever. It really is. Like, it really is a great joke. It's amazing. And what I would have loved, and now I get why they didn't do it. I would have loved, even if they didn't show that scene, if they just, after they got into the ministry, we saw they had little badges, even if you couldn't even see what they said. I would know it said Harry Potter Rescue Mission, and I would have loved it. But I was so disappointed that they didn't have that in there.
The movie also cuts literally all of the other rooms
in the Department
of Mysteries. I mean, we have the room with all the prophecies.
That's the only room.
And we have the room with the archway.
And the archway, yeah. But there's the spinning door room, which is like the confuse you so you can't get out, or kind of like a security system that makes it hard to find your way around. There's the room that is the time room, which has all the clocks and the bell jar in it. Which the bell jar is really interesting. There's the room with the brains in a vat in it, which is wild. The brains attack Ron, which that's not in the movie. They literally just cut all of that out. Like, there's the moment where, like I said, with the bell jar, where one of the Death Eaters, after the fight breaks out, falls into this bell jar, which has described as like a bird that is moving from top to bottom, and as it moves back and forth, it goes from an egg to like an old bird, and then back to an egg. And the Death, and this would be horrific to some extent, so I get why they didn't put it in there. The Death Eater falls and his head falls in, and he de-ages into a baby, and then gets out. Just his head. So then at one point, and then he ages back up, and then he de-ages down, but at one point he pulls his head out, and so he's wandering around as a human, a grown man body with a bawling baby head on top, and I get why it's not in the movie, but man.
It's bananas.
It's bananas.
I guess it would have been a hard effect to do.
I mean, it would have been, they could have done it. I mean, yeah, it's an extra effect you would have to do. Yeah. I think more importantly, it's kind of fucking intense. Like, it's dark. I don't know. It's not, I guess, to me, it's a little dark. Yeah, like, it's weird.
It's weird. It's like, it's dark, but it's something that could potentially be played as like gallows humor.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of how it is in the book, is a little bit how it feels. Okay, now we get into some of my big ones. We're finally 2 hours in, Jesus, getting to my big gripes with this movie. The smoke teleportation. The smoke monster teleportation they all do. I can't stand it. I hate it. I hate everything about it. So all of the Death Eaters fly around as black smoke.
Yes.
And all the Order of the Phoenix can fly around as like a white smoky monster. I say that it's from Lost. They're like the smoke monster from Lost. It's basically what they look like. I hate it for a couple of reasons. One, it robs us of more interesting dueling because they sort of fight each other in that form where they like fly through each other.
Yeah, they like fly around each other.
Yeah, whatever. And so that's, to me, that's boring because I'm way more interested in watching them actually duel, like actually cast spells. And I think it's a very sort of lazy way out of doing that. Like, instead of having them actually dueling and doing interesting spell stuff, it's just, we'll just animate this kind of like vague, like...
Yeah.
The white and dark swirls at each other. Like, okay, fine. And then on top of that, it's explicitly stated in book 7, I think, or 6, Voldemort can fly without the assistance of a broom or anything. And that's like a big deal. Yeah. Like, holy shit, he can just fly around. Yeah, because he has like figured out how to do that. Yeah. Nobody else knows how to do that. But everybody else knows how to do that in the movies. So it's not interesting. I hate that. Little one, but big one. They changed the color of Stupefy in the movies for no reason. Why? Stupefy is red in the books. In the movie, every time they cast it, it's like, and now this probably changes from movie to movie. I don't even remember. But in this one, it's like whitish blue, like just generic white spell effect. It's red. Make it red. It's red. It's just, why? Why would you change that?
Because the good guys use it a lot.
Yeah.
And
that's
red
true.
is an evil
That's what
color.
it is. That's what it is.
Thanks, Star Wars.
That's what it is. Oh, that's so... No, that's not Star Wars. Well, because in Star Wars... No, I mean, but no. In Star Wars, I get what you're saying, but the lasers, the good guys shoot red lasers. The bad guys shoot green lasers.
Yes.
The bad guys have red lightsabers, and the good guys have blue and green lightsabers.
I'm thinking more of the lightsabers.
But when they shoot, which is closer to like a spell shooting out, the good guys have red lasers. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but people remember the lightsabers.
All right. And I think, kind of going on with this last battle, this is where my biggest problems. I don't think the movie remotely captures like the sort of terror and violence of the final battle with the Death Eaters. Yeah. Like it is chaotic. It is brutal, like to some extent. Like the part with, like I said, with the baby head thing, and then the brains coming out, and like Ron gets grabbed by the brains, and like Hermione gets hit with a spell, and they think she might be dead. Yeah, like they're not sure if she's alive
she just,
or not.
Like, goes down.
Yeah, she like goes down and they know it's not Avada Kedavra because it's like white or blue or something. But they're like, shit, she might be dead. Ron gets grabbed by this brain, and they think he's dying. They don't know if he's gonna live. On top of just all the other nonsense of them fighting through all these different rooms and all this stuff happening. And I also think the Hall of Prophecies is really, because it's all CG, it's a little dated and looks a little super CG heavy.
It does.
Like it does. It's not great.
It didn't age particularly well.
No. Okay, this is the one that drove me insane when this might be longer than the Goblet of Fire one. When I saw this movie after reading this book, this drove me crazy. Now, in retrospect, on rereading and rewatching, I'm okay with it because it makes sense. But in the movie, Bellatrix hits Sirius with Avada Kedavra. We hear her say it. We see the green spell come out, and it hits him. In the book, this is what is described. Only one couple was still battling, apparently unaware of the new arrival. Dumbledore shows up early in the book and is helping during this point. Harry saw Sirius duck Bellatrix's jet of red light. He was laughing at her. "Come on, you can do better than that," he yelled, his voice echoing around the cavernous room. The second jet of light hit him squarely in the chest. The laughter had not died from his face, but his eyes widened in shock, and then he falls through the thing. So we don't know what color the spell is. And the spell before that was red.
Yes.
That's what we know. So there was lots of speculation on the internet. Is Sirius after this book because he falls to, also the sort of mystery of the veil and what it is and what it, now looking back on it, rereading it, I absolutely think, of course, Sirius was always going to be dead. It's very obvious to me now. But at the time, I was buying into the train of what does this mean? What does the veil mean? Is there something? Could Sirius come back somehow? Is there some way they're gonna? What's gonna happen? It felt like something could happen in book 6 with Sirius or book 7 or whatever. But when you see him hit with Avada Kedavra, it's like, oh, but nope, he's dead. You know what I mean? Like that, and then it's different because we know the books and movies make it very clear there's no coming back from that.
And there's not really any room for speculation.
There's no speculation there. And to me, it just killed the speculation and it drove me insane because I was like, oh, you know, everybody, like the little bit of me holding out some sort of hope that maybe there was going to be some weird thing that happened with the veil or who knows. But now I'm like, oh, no, there's not. Thanks, movie. Was my big problem with it. But whatever. Like I said, in retrospect, with the way it's talked about and Harry's dealing with it and all that sort of stuff, I very much understand. Yeah, he's dead, and this is the point. And Harry dealing with, I get it now, and it would be silly to bring him back or do anything like that with it. But at the time, 15-year-old me was, or I wasn't 15, I don't know, 17, 16, or whatever. I wasn't that much older. Oh my God, we're almost done. better in the book.
It would have been really cool to see Dumbledore show up early and
we talked
fuck
about
up some Death Eaters.
Yeah, because it would be cool to see him against somebody other than Voldemort.
Yeah,
because we see him against Voldemort, which is fine, but like to see him like against way lesser foes, like just Dumbledore being like, "What's up? I'm way better than all of you." He defeats like 8 of them at once. Basically, is kind of how it's described. And this is kind of goes back to not seeing Neville's parents' torture is and the effects of their torture from Bellatrix and the Death Eaters is that in this final battle, Neville shows up trying to be a hero with his bloody nose. I hate reading his bloody nose voice, where it's like all of the B's and D's because he's got a stuffy nose basically but he runs in trying to be the hero and he can't even cast Stupefy. He just yells Stupefy over and over again. But he runs in and they grab him and Bellatrix uses Crucio on him and like tortures them in front of Harry.
Yeah.
And again, I wish we would have gotten that moment of just like, can we not see these evil people do something evil? Like ever?
Let's see them be evil.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you keep telling us they're bad and yes, they're trying to accomplish, we assume, evil goals. Can we just see them like be evil? Like just put it in the movie. Also, so then ultimately, Bellatrix does run away. Harry chases her down. That all happens pretty similarly after she kills Sirius. And he does hit her with Crucio in the book. But in the movie, in the book, she just laughs at him. And it's like, she's the one who says you have to mean it. Yeah. If you want that, you've never done that before. If you have to mean it. And in the movie, though, she like cowers. Like he hits her and she falls down. And then he comes over to her and she's like, and I'm like, no.
She does like a weird whimper thing.
Yeah, it's so out of character for Bellatrix. Like she's batty. Like she's not.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't give a shit. Like you stick your wand in her face. She'll be like, yeah, fucking do it. She's no. That's not remotely within her character, and it just kind of drove me crazy.
Something else that we don't get in the movie is the statues in the fountain that we talked about like 2 hours ago come to life.
Yeah.
Dumbledore brings them to life and they're running around doing shit.
Yeah. Yes,
helping him out while he's fighting with Voldemort.
Yeah, they do a bunch of different stuff. Some of them light fires to get, which we don't know why they're lighting fires, but ultimately it's so that people can come. They like call for help, basically. And I just think that duel in general, it sounds way cooler in the book than it is portrayed in the movie. There are some really interesting moments. It's fine in the movie that they do some cool stuff, but I just imagined it a lot faster than it kind of happens in the movie and a lot more back and forth. They do the dumb thing that it's really dumb at the beginning of the duel where they both, Voldemort and Dumbledore both shoot a spell at each other and their wands connect and they do the like thing that that Harry and Voldemort did at the end of 4. Where the beam connects them, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because that's only supposed to happen with wands that share a core.
Yeah.
As per the Mythos movie.
Yeah, but the movie is unaware of this and goes, that looks cool. Let's do that. It kind of looks cool. I think it's a cool effect in the instance of 4 when it makes sense in the moment. But it's also, I don't like it in this moment because that's boring. Just watching them circle around do that. It's way cooler because like in the book, like they shoot spells and then Voldemort makes a big shield appear out of thin air and then Dumbledore makes a whip out of fire. And like, it's just like, show us cool, weird spells. Like come up with stuff. And they do. They come up with a couple and I'll talk about it. But like, yeah, I just think that duel could have been way cooler than it was. I think they needed to just do another pass on that one. Yeah.
Dumbledore also has a line during this battle that I really like. Voldemort says something about just kill me then or something like that. And Dumbledore says, we both know there are other ways of destroying a man, Tom. Yeah. Which is a boss ass line.
It is. It really is. So this is interesting, and I don't know what to do with this one. We're so close. The movie plays, so at the end of this battle, Voldemort possesses Harry. Mm-hmm. And in the book, he basically possesses him and says to Dumbledore, kill me. You can kill me right now. Just kill Harry, you'll kill me, basically is like the implication. Yeah. To see if he will. It kind of plays into Albus's character about his feelings for Harry versus his desire to end this evil and the conflict that's within him and would he act, he's basically torturing Albus or Dumbledore in the sense of like, come on, you could end this right now. All you got to do is kill Harry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you actually have to do it. You can't just kind of help Harry kill himself, which you do over the course of 7 books. But in the book or in the movie, they play it as if Harry's like becoming Voldemort, not like becoming evil like Voldemort. He starts it's not because Voldemort never says like kill me. Like he never says like it plays out completely differently. It's more of like Harry, like Voldemort leaves or I guess possesses him, and Dumbledore like coaxes Harry into like not becoming Voldemort. He's like, you can fight it or whatever. And it's just a very interesting change. And I'm not sure how I feel about it. I
think it plays more clearly in the book.
Yeah.
What happens.
Yeah. It's just a little confusing in the movie, but I don't know. And we both had this one, Harry breaking everything in Albus's office and Dumbledore's office.
He deserves it. He deserves to
really
break
does.
things.
He does. And Dumbledore deserves to have his shit broken.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, when he gets back after they leave,
the ministry,
Harry just starts breaking all the shiny things.
Yeah, he just starts throwing shit around and smashing it.
And they completely cut that in the movie. Okay, and then the movie does a terrible job of explaining everything, as we mentioned in the intro, but it does not explain at all that Trelawney was the one who made the prediction. Mm-hmm. It does not explain that it was Dumbledore who witnessed the prediction, and that's like kind of important. A little bit, like they just do nothing with that.
At least a little important.
Yeah, it's very strange. There's also the moment going on the prefect thing where Dumbledore explains why he didn't make Harry a prefect, and I thought it was fun because he's like, I thought you had enough going on. I'm not gonna make you. I think you had quite enough to be getting on with, or whatever. And this whole scene needed to be 3 times longer in the movie. It's like 3 sentences and it explains almost nothing. I was like, I would be so confused if I did not read the books at what the heck this all meant. There's a really good moment in the book where Harry's like, oh, maybe Sirius can become a ghost. And he goes and he talks to nearly headless Nick. It's a pointless scene.
Yeah.
And Nick's like, no. I mean, he could, but he's not going to. And I just thought it was interesting because that's the kind of thing that as a reader, you're like, well, how do ghosts happen?
Yeah.
Could he become a ghost?
There are ghosts in this universe.
Maybe Sirius could become a ghost. And it's that sort of thing, that question that you have as a reader that you get an answer to, like where Nick kind of explains how that works to some extent and is like, nah, he's not going to be a ghost.
There was a moment that I missed in the movie that's in the book of those core 6 who went to the ministry.
Yeah.
Just like hanging out together in the hospital wing at the end. And I thought it was a nice moment.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
Because those 6 they're important moving forward.
Yeah, Neville, Luna, Ginny, Ron, Hermione, and Harry.
Yeah. And
then finally the Order confronts the Dursleys in the book. We end it at the Hogwarts Express in the movie, kind of.
Yeah.
The movie ending's fine. But in the book, they confront the Dursleys and they're like, hey, stop being so shitty. I was like, finally somebody comes up to the Dursleys and like, hey, can you stop abusing this kid?
For real.
And Moody has a great line.
Moody has the great line. Uncle Vernon says something about like not being aware of whatever. And Moody says, I expect what you're not aware of would fill several books.
Yep. Got him.
Savage.
Super savage. That's it! Oh my goodness. That's it for Better in the Book.
Not the end of the episode.
No, we still got 2 more segments. But here we go.
That is the end of Better in the Book.
And that's most of it. So let's get into the second part of Muggle Questions.
Is it me, or did Sirius and Harry's relationship accelerate very quickly? Did the book tell any more about their relationship than the movies did to warrant such a warm and enthusiastic hello?
So Sirius and Harry spend a bit more time together in book 4. There's more than just that conversation in the fireplace.
Yeah.
And
they meet him in person again in Hogsmeade.
And we also see that they correspond through letters much more than the movies let on.
Yeah.
So, but I agree that by movie standard, it does seem like,
a little
like their relationship accelerates.
Kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot more in the books.
I understand Harry is still a kid. They want to keep him from some of this stuff. But how old is he legitimately in this book/movie?
He's 15.
Yeah.
He's fifth year, he's 15. That's how it works.
This probably isn't answered in the book, but maybe you guys know, just for being huge fans of Harry Potter. Why does Dumbledore have so many names? What was the inspiration behind that? Do we know?
He's a straight-ass boss.
Yeah.
Level 1 million wizard.
He does. It's a quirk of the writing. I assume that sort of JK wanted him to be.
It's kind of a writing aesthetic.
Yes.
Kind of a thing.
That's what I was kind of the word I was looking for. It's an aesthetic choice in writing an interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give him a bunch of names because that's funny.
It also feels
also,
kind of oldie-timey, archaic.
Because he is like 100 and something.
Yeah.
He's very old. He's older than a normal human, I believe.
He's pretty old.
Yeah.
Do we know what a Nargle is? Or is that something that's explained later on?
We have no idea what a Nargle is. They're mentioned like once in the book. The movie adds them a little bit more or uses them a couple times.
Yeah, the movie uses it kind of as a recurring joke.
She mentions them in relation to the mistletoe in the book.
Yes.
And that's like it. And then it's kind of the only time we hear about them. There's a bunch of other creatures that she mentions in the book.
Right. Because Luna believes in a lot of stuff that has not been proven to exist.
Yeah, because it doesn't.
Or does it?
Did anybody else find it weird that they had a sign-up sheet for Dumbledore's army? What are we, in colonial times where you have to sign your name to join? Why couldn't you just say, yes, I'm in? It's a paper trail, people. Come on.
So we did talk a little bit about the sign-up sheet earlier. It was enchanted, so if anyone who signed their name on that sheet ratted out the DA, the charm would reveal who they were by spelling the word sneak across their face in really gross pimples.
Yeah. So yeah, it's they had that specifically as sort of a precaution. They don't tell anybody this, but sort of as a precaution.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious, did the book explain why the Room of Requirement presented itself to Neville? I mean, of all the people, why Neville?
Yeah, in the book, as we mentioned earlier, they found out about the Room of Requirement from Dobby.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't just present itself to Neville. So, all right, better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
I thought starting out in the dried out playground was creepy and atmospheric.
When they do cut all the Dursley stuff, it kind of starts out in a good, interesting visual place.
I also liked that they made a switch for his letter informing him that he's been expelled. They changed it to a kind of a howler type where it forms into a face and talks out loud. I also never realized before this that it was Umbridge's voice.
I don't know if it is.
I think it is.
I thought it was at first, but when I thought that when it started, because I was like, that sounds like Umbridge, but it signed Mafilda Hopkirk, who is the head of enforcement of whatever.
Right.
So the letter says it's Mafalda Hopkirk.
In the movie?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it does. At the end, it says like, yours truly, Mafalda Hopkirk. So I assume it's her. But it does sound like Umbridge. I thought the same.
I wonder if they had her voice it anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. It's possible. And like she just read. Yeah, I agree. I thought it sounded like her, but it does say it's Mafalda Hopkirk writing it, so that would make sense. I don't know. I agree. I thought the same thing. I think the extendable ears are cool looking in the movie. In the book, they're just kind of described as like skin colored string, but in the movie, they're like actual ears, which is kind of cool. Although they're less useful. Because in the movie or in the book, they can like snake their way under doors and stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas with the giant ear on the end, that's not as doable. And you had,
there was a cool visual thing that I noticed in the first scene when Harry
shows up at
Grimmauld Place and he meets Ron and Hermione. They're both wearing stripes, visually separating them from Harry, who's wearing a solid color, putting them together.
Because, he feels very...
he feels
abandoned by everybody.
He feels abandoned by them, and like they've all been sitting around having a great time without him.
Yeah, and he's just been stuck at the Dursleys.
I also really liked the moment where Crookshanks tries to play with the extendable ears.
Because of course,
as an owner of cats,
yes,
I appreciate the cat mischief.
Yeah, there's a little moment when they go to visit the Ministry where Arthur, when they go through the visitor entrance, there's a phone booth, and in the movie, as the elevator of the phone booth goes down into the ground, the inside part of it does, and then in the movie you see another identical
and
interior
another one comes
kind of
out in
magically
its
come
place.
down and replace
Which
it, which
is
I
also
liked.
kind of a Marvel-esque joke.
It is a little bit, and it also just makes sense. And again, it's not like that. The movie the book just doesn't describe what happens, but so that could be very well what does happen in the world of the book. I just thought it was a clever idea in the movie.
I liked in the movie that when they were at the hearing for Harry and they put it to a vote whether they wanted him to be expelled or not, Mrs. Fig starts to raise her hand.
She votes for Harry.
Yeah.
Like,
I thought it was cute.
She goes, no. Yeah, it is a fun little moment.
We mentioned this earlier. I'm okay with the prefect subplot being dropped. I'm fine with it.
I'm okay with it. I just thought it was interesting. But yeah, it definitely is one of those things you would cut when you're making the cuts. So I get it. I think the movie made a smart idea by having the Seamus conversation when Harry first gets to Hogwarts. And Seamus is like, hey, my mom doesn't believe you. And my mom didn't want me to come back to school because she thinks you're lying. And, all this stuff and this drama between Seamus and Harry. In the book, that all just plays out in the dormitory with just like Neville, Dean, and Harry and Ron there. And in the movie, it plays out in the common room with like all of the Gryffindors there. And I thought that was
everybody's there.
Everybody's watching it. I thought that was a smart idea because it kind of increases Harry's sense of like,
his
anxiety of everybody's against him. Even if half the people didn't buy in, it still would feel that way. And so I thought that was a smart idea.
That first class with Umbridge when somebody sends a magic paper bird flying around the room and she reduces it to ash.
Yeah.
Good character moment for her. Also, the fucking Defense Against the Dark Arts textbook.
This.
It looks like the picture on the front is like a Dick and Jane-esque, like a 1950s.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
This is a little thing that I just noticed this time is that Umbridge has a framed picture of Cornelius Fudge, the Prime Minister, on her desk, which I thought was, clever.
I'm also okay with Quidditch subplots getting the axe.
Yeah.
It does eliminate some character development and some interesting things, but
yeah,
in the grand
agree.
scheme of things, I'm okay with it.
It's one of the first things you gots to go. I think it makes more sense for them to learn about Thestrals in class and the stuff we talked about earlier, but I like more time with Luna and Harry. I like Luna and Harry having that moment together. Where she kind of explains what they are, and she would be into them. It makes sense for Luna to kind of like be interested in them. We know she's into like strange creatures, and then the baby Thestral is super cute.
Oh, so weirdly cute.
Yes, super cute. This is a little thing that this is the kind of little thing that is great for. This is a very J.K. Rowling type thing that the movie does here. When we go into the Hogshead, which eventually we'll find out that the barman at the Hogshead is Aberforth Dumbledore, Albus's brother.
Yes.
We find that out in 6, I guess, or 7. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. We see him in this movie for just a second. In the book, it's described, Harry says, the barman looked vaguely familiar to me. Yeah. That's like the line that we get, and then that's the little tease set up. In the movie, a goat walks by behind the bar with Aberforth, and there's a line it's in this one, book 4.
It's in book 4. There's a throwaway line
about how Albus's brother Aberforth got into some trouble for something he did with a goat,
like inappropriate charms with a goat.
Yeah, and it's not. It sounds like weird, but it's not. Ultimately, I don't think it ends up being like just something else happened.
I think it ends up being something goofy. I don't really remember.
I thought having the goat there was a funny
that's a
book reader
fun little
Easter egg.
Yeah. I thought it was funny during one of the many montages of Umbridge, a couple of them, being Umbridge, she measures Flitwick.
Yeah, how tall he is.
Yeah.
Because he is, of course, I don't know, I guess he's just a little person. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, he's very short. And I thought that was a good... sort of that's a little visual representation of, like we said, her sort of bigotry.
Yeah, her sort of bigotry. Maybe there's an implication there that she...
Oh, like is he a goblin
he could
or
be
like
a goblin
or
a dwarf or something.
Something, yeah.
I also really like that there's a couple references in the movie to Umbridge making rules about boy-girl interactions.
Which it's not mentioned in the book.
It's not in the book, but it's perfect because it has fuck all to do with education, but someone like her would definitely try to control that.
Yeah.
That is a very clear nod to like a certain kind of political sensibility.
Yes, absolutely. And again, with their old-fashioned Dick and Jane book, and sort of her, Trevor has a question about this, so we'll get to it there.
Yeah,
we'll get to that with the Trevor question. The next one after that, though, there's a good line that's added for the movie.
Hermione has a great line after Harry and Cho kiss, and he goes back to the
and he tells them that it was wet because she was crying, and Ron's like, "Are you that bad?" Which is in the book. That line is.
Yeah, but then Hermione says, "I'm sure Harry's kissing was more than satisfactory."
Yeah,
it's such a Hermione way to put it.
More than satisfactory. I'm torn on this because I agree with all the problems with the room requirement and what they do with it and kind of how it changes. But I don't hate, and it's kind of fun in the montage of that messing with Filch and the inquisitorial squad, and like they're trying to get in, and then like it turns into a broom closet, and I also kind of like that Hogwarts decides, because Harry has this line about it's like Hogwarts wants us to fight back, or like it's like, and I kind of like that idea of personification or personifying Hogwarts a little more, and it is like it's showing Neville the thing and being like, yeah, you guys should use this because this Umbridge lady's a nightmare. Like I kind of like that idea. If they're gonna cut Dobby out, that's the way to do it, but don't cut Dobby out. Like that's bigger thing is they shouldn't have cut Dobby out. I also think when Harry gets into that scene, he gets into the scene in Albus's office. After he sees Mr. Weasley get bit by the snake, a whole different storyline. Bit by the snake, and Dumbledore. The whole movie, and in the book, it's more explicitly stated. In the movie, they're trying to visually play this as much, and Harry says it a couple times, like Dumbledore won't even look at me. But he gets in there, and Dumbledore again is doing all of his stuff, and he won't look at Harry, and Harry just
he's
like
very pointedly not looking
at Harry, and Harry kind of like snaps and yells, "Look at me!" And it's a little, it plays better overall in the book, but I don't think that particular scene, I don't think that's terrible shorthand for sort of the simmering emotions boiling over that we get from Harry in the book, because we get all of the emotions played out, and because we get to hear how he's feeling in the book. It's not the worst way to kind of have that all bubble to the surface in the movie. Again, I don't hate it. That's that's not as good as it gets and better in the movie, but I don't hate it. I thought this is interesting, and this goes back to the thing we were talking about earlier, where at the end when he gets possessed by Voldemort, he has to like battle it, and basically he ultimately like pities Voldemort, and that causes Voldemort to leave him, and he ends up not becoming evil, or whatever the implications are there. In the movie, I feel like it kind of makes more sense that Harry feels like he's becoming evil versus in the book he thinks he literally like is being used by Voldemort, like he was the snake, because he sees the stuff from the snake's perspective, and he's like literally in the book thinks like he became the snake and somehow got to the, now I guess it's not completely outlandish because magic, but it's a little weird to me that he's, ultimately they kind of sort that out by like Ron being like, well, you were in bed the whole time, I saw you thrashing forever, and Ginny was like, well, I've been possessed by Voldemort, and this isn't the same thing. But I actually don't hate the idea in the movie of it not being like, oh, I'm literally becoming like Voldemort's using me or whatever, to like he gets this insecure feeling because he's angry all the time and he's upset all the time. He's like, is Voldemort's sort of evil nature like seeping into me and corrupting me, as opposed to like literally making me like using me as a snake, turning me into a snake or whatever. Like, is this why I'm so miserable all the time? And it's like, no, you're just a teenager. And it's a little bit of that too. But it's an interesting idea. I don't think it's the worst.
The movie moves the world isn't split into good people and Death Eaters line.
They have that conversation in person with Sirius as opposed to in the fire.
Yes, which is a good change.
I think it was a good change because I think it just having Sirius right there with them, it adds a little more gravitas to that moment to let him deliver it in person. And I think it wouldn't have had the impact on the audience if we saw him deliver it in the fire. Even though it does in the book, because it's all just reading it, I think in the movie it helps having Sirius be there to kind of really emote and give that line. I think giving Kingsley Shacklebolt he's got, you may disagree with Dumbledore, but you can't deny he's got style. when Dumbledore escapes after the whole Dumbledore's army fallout. In the book, it's Phineas Nigellus's.
Yeah.
Which is Sirius, or
one of the portraits.
It's one of the previous headmasters who's also like Sirius's great grandfather or whatever, and was a Slytherin. But it doesn't matter. In the movie, they give it to Kingsley Shacklebolt. I think it was a good change.
Yeah.
It kind of fits in with Kingsley, and since Kingsley is like a double agent, I kind of like that.
I liked that the movie showed, however briefly, the mass breakout from Azkaban.
Yeah.
In the book, we just learn about it through the Daily Prophet.
Yeah.
So getting to see it was nice.
I really like this change. I think this might be the best change this movie or any of the Harry Potter movies has made so far.
A bold claim.
It's up there. There's a couple good ones. The movies have their moments where they do some smart things, but this might be the best one because I think I had problems with this in the book. When Hagrid takes Hermione and the group, in the movie, he takes Hermione and Harry and Ron to go meet Grawp. In the book, it's just Harry. I like that it's all of them. But on top of that, I like that there's this Grawp grabs Hermione, picks her up, and Hermione confronts him and is like, hey, put me down.
Yeah, she kind of scolds him a little bit.
Scolds him, and he puts her down. And then he gives her the bike.
Yeah, it's
horn,
like the handlebars from a bike.
It's got a bell on it that you can ring, and he rings it, and then they ring it, and there's this little moment of connection. And I think it adds a lot of humanity to Grawp's character.
Yes,
especially within the themes of the book that we're going for so much that all of these other non-human, species are deserving of equal rights and respect and all this sort of thing. It was very weird to me to where Hermione's reaction in the book is they're just horrified of the fact that Hagrid brought Grawp back and they can't believe he did it. And it's just Grawp has almost zero.
Yeah, he's very animalistic.
Yeah, completely animalistic, and he just like ignores them most of the time when they're meeting him and introduced to him. Apparently now he was kind of picking up, which we find out later in the book. But I think having this moment earlier and having Hermione kind of connect with him a little bit makes a lot of sense, so that when he shows up later, and now they cut this part, he doesn't say, or does he say Hermy in the movie? I can't remember.
No, he doesn't say it.
Okay, so they set it up, but then they don't pay it off. But in the movie, or in the book, eventually when they run into him at the end with the centaurs and all that stuff happens, Grawp like recognizes her in the book and is like, Hermy? Where's Hager? And starts talking to her, but we had no reason to think he even knew who she was before that moment.
Right.
Whereas I like in the movie, they kind of set that up so that they kind of know it. We at least see that he kind of like has a connection
the book,
there.
I think makes his humanity more of a reveal.
Yeah.
But the movie shows him as more explicitly having that humanity and like having that connection.
And I also like Hermione seeing that in him.
Yes.
Whereas in the book, she's like just kind of like horrified at the idea of him being there and can't believe that Hagrid would bring him back. And she's like, why? Like, he's just a monster. Like, she flies in the face of so much of Hermione's other exploits in the books of being this champion for equal rights.
I agree.
And you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of flies in the face of her character. And I think it was a really smart change.
There's a short scene with Fred and George being kind to a first year.
Yeah, who had detention with Umbridge.
Yeah.
And they're kind of talking to him, and this is right before they leave, and they're like, oh, it'll be okay, just do this. I thought it's a little thing, but it's one of those little scenes where we don't ever really get anything like that with the twins necessarily. And I thought that was, I don't know, just a nice little ad.
And it's a nice nod to the solidarity among the students as well. Yeah,
I agree. And then the Weasley exit, I like that it's the fireworks. So in the book, their exit is follows them setting off the swamp, which the swamp's interesting and cool, but the fireworks are way more bombastic.
I like the idea of the swamp, and I get why they changed it for the movie, because the fireworks work much better for a visual medium. I like the idea of the swamp. I like the idea that it stayed there for so long after they were gone, and like no one would help Umbridge remove it, and she couldn't figure out how to get rid of it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, it just that's cool. But I do like the fireworks, and I like the moment where they fly out, and I also like this just in general. All the educational decrees hammered into the wall. I think it's kind of funny. And when they fly out, they all fall and shatter. Like it's a cool,
it definitely looks cool. The only other thing that kind of bothered me in the movie was that they didn't plug their new business.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, because in the book they very explicitly like, come check us out. We're on Diagon Alley, Weasley Wizarding Wheezes.
Special discount to anyone who's going to use their products to get rid of Umbridge.
Yeah, I wish they would have included that. But yeah, I like a lot about how they did their sort of big exit. And also having that be right before the climax as opposed to earlier in the semester. Because Umbridge is dealing with all these fireworks. So she ends up getting all dirty and singed and her hair's all disheveled. So then in the final confrontation between her and Harry and them, when she's like considering crucioing students to get information out of them, her visual appearance.
Visually, she looks like she's coming unhinged.
She looks,
but also, speaking of that scene, I thought it was clever of the movie to show one of the cats and one on the cat plates.
Yes, when Harry and Hermione come in.
Yeah, to presumably go notify her, although they took all the portraits down, so wherever it went through.
Yeah, who knows? But because in the book it's mentioned that she had an alarm. Yeah. But in the movie, the cat.
The cat. Although I strongly object to perpetuating negative stereotypes about cats being evil.
I agree.
Strongly object to that.
I agree. I also think the movie makes a smart choice by having Hermione just take Umbridge to where Grop was.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
In the book, they it makes an explicit point of saying Harry's like, we kept going into the forest well past where Grop. We didn't go to where Grop was because he thought maybe that's where they were going, but that's not where Hermione's taking him. Ultimately, she's just wandering into the forest, talking really loudly,
hoping something will happen.
Like the centaurs or something show up. But I was like, yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't she just take him to Grop and hope that like Grop helps him out? Or like it causes enough of a ruckus that they can, get out of there, and which is what happens in the movie. So I thought that made sense. I was like, what? I didn't get that in the book. And then we both had this one. Umbridge gets taken away by the centaurs, and as she's being drug away, she says, tell them I mean them no harm, I think is what she says.
The single most savage line in any of these movies.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Professor. I must not tell lies.
It's a great callback. It's a great setup and a great callback, and it was not in the book, and it's a really smart addition. It's a great gotcha. Yeah, so that is really, really smart addition. I like that they changed the Death Eater masks in this one. We talked about it in 4, the little skull masks. They're kind of creepier in this one with this weird gold. To me, they just look like less like Halloween costumes. They also don't have the big conical...
they're dunce caps.
Dunce caps anymore. So I think they just look cooler in this one and more intimidating.
Yeah. And we also get a couple seconds of Harry and Sirius dueling.
Yeah, I thought that was cool, which isn't in the book. They have the moment where they're kind of dueling two people together and like going back and forth, and it's just fun. And it wasn't in the book, so that's it. Better than the movie. Let's move on to Muggle Question Part 3.
The stupefy charm seems to push back the recipient of the charm pretty far. Is that normal?
Yes, that is normal.
Yes.
That is mentioned in the book.
Stupefy does knock people back, but it can knock people further based on certain factors. Like in one point, in one of the later books, Harry picks up multiple wands, I believe, if I remember correctly, and uses them at once, and it like is like a shotgun effect. Like it hits like harder and they go flying further. I could be, unless I'm misremembering that, but it does knock people back, and more importantly, which isn't always illustrated in the movies, I don't think, it knocks them out, like unconscious, like it like knocks you unconscious.
Okay, the little kid that used the stupefy charm, it worked, but it blew him back as well. Like the recoil of a shotgun, except far greater. Does the book explain why that happens? It doesn't seem to have any recoil effect on anybody else. That's why I ask.
Again, yes. Probably especially for someone who is both small and a beginner.
Is that a yes? I would have went with no on that one.
Kid gets knocked back by his own stupefy charm?
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about Nigel here, aren't we? When he almost gets knocked into the fire.
I would say no. There's no kickback on wands. That's not illustrated anywhere in the books, is it?
I guess not, but it seems like a reasonable
I don't want to say it's
conclusion
unreasonable.
to me.
I've just there's no from my memory that never happens in any of the books. Like being
right,
you know what I mean?
I'll take your word for it.
He is particularly small,
Yeah.
but it's magic. It's not like I don't know. I was never under the implication that there was any sort of kickback from using spells, but there could be. So I would go with no on that one, but I don't disagree that there could be.
Did Jenny really just dust the dummy when they're all in the circle practicing the spells? Or did it just like have enough? And then later she dusted something else. Like, is she doing it wrong or is she doing it right?
Jenny's using Reducto, which the other people are using Stupefy in that scene. For some reason, she uses Reducto, which is a spell that like destroys stuff, kind of, or blasts. It's like a blasting spell, basically.
Yeah, and she's apparently wicked good at it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, she just destroys that. They actually all do that. In that last scene in the Hall of Mysteries plays out a little differently. It's not like Jenny using one spell and knocking the entire thing down.
Right.
Or they all are like knocking shelves over to run away in the book. So
did the Room of Requirement just wingman for your boy? Hot dang.
And hell yes, the Room of Requirement just wingman for Harry.
The Room of Requirement provides exactly what you need at the exact moment you need it. So
there you go. Yeah, in the book, it's just there already.
Yeah,
but in the movie, it's a fun change to have it.
Yes.
Show up at just the right moment. But there is a fun moment in the book when it's there because Harry and Luna are under it at first, and he's like, "Oh," Luna's like, "Oh, look, mistletoe," and he's like, "Huh," and she's like, "There's probably Nargles in it," and he's like, "Oh, okay, cool."
Does the book go into explanation on why Sirius ran away from his family?
Sirius's family is all like super dark wizards. So Sirius is kind of, if you will pardon the pun, because I don't think I have a way around it, he's the black sheep of his family.
Yeah, they're all super evil.
Yeah.
Bellatrix is related to him. Regulus, who they don't mention, was a Death Eater for a while. His whole family was just evil.
And his mother, who we sort of meet through her portrait.
Yeah.
In the book, is
her
real
portrait's
piece of
not in the
work.
movie. I wish it was.
Yeah, no,
that may be in a
not.
deleted scene. But his mom is a super bigot and just awful person. So he didn't fit in because he wasn't awful. All right, movie nailed it.
Nailed it.
Big D.
Big D. Dudley. Yeah.
The super stupid like white boy gangster clothes.
Yes. Absolutely perfect like English thug type look. Although there's a moment in the book where he punches Harry because the lights, when the Dementors showed up and he doesn't know what's happening, so he just punches Harry. And I thought that was funny. And he's like has no idea. He just like swings and hits Harry in the head. I wish that would have been in the movie, but yeah, he's pretty good in his brief moment. We finally see Harry's Patronus turn into a stag. It's still a little hard to tell, but you can see it at least, and it actually charges down the Dementors as it has been described to do since the third book, but we have only now just finally seen. So stupid. But yeah, they finally get that right. They're like, hey, maybe we should do what the book says, because that's way cooler. And I think the design of Grimmauld Place is pretty cool and pretty spot on from what I imagined when I read the book.
And we only get a couple seconds with Creature, but I thought they did a good job with him.
Yeah, I think I
think he looks like how they describe him, and he
old
acts
creepy,
like where he's just kind of like mumbling atrocities all the time.
We get more of it in the book of he just because the joke is that he mumbles things like under his breath, but everybody can hear him because he's old and doesn't he just doesn't. He's like, oh, stupid filthy mudbloods in my house, but like everybody in the room can hear him. Yeah.
He's like everybody's racist grandpa.
Yeah. Miss Fig, I think she was adequately weird in the movie, but and kind of batty, but
she had a good line during the hearing that I was glad that they left in. When they ask her to describe them, meaning the Dementors, she says, well, one of them was very large and one was rather skinny. Yeah. Starts describing Harry and Dudley.
I think there's a little brief moment where they're going to the Ministry where Arthur is just infatuated with the turnstiles and the subway and everything. And it's like the only time in the movies we really get to see that Mr. Weasley being like obsessed with
out about Muggle stuff.
Yeah. Which I thought was fun.
I also thought the Ministry overall was pretty good.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
it
way
looked
they
cool.
portrayed it.
Yeah, the memos flying around in the elevator, the little paper airplanes that fly around. The guy has the flaming box. They mentioned that guy in the book. Yeah. And the elevators this is actually a change because they don't mention this in the book, but the elevator's kind of working like Wonka-vators.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
I liked the look of Neville's weird plant.
Mimbletonia.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does show up. It looks.
They showed it for the briefest of seconds.
Yeah.
Looks like a weird cactus.
Yeah, the Thestrals look really cool.
Yes.
They kind of look exactly how you imagine them, like the weird lizardy, skeleton-y
like
things.
Corpse horses, kind of.
Yeah, lizard corpse horses. Nailed it. Umbridge is pretty great.
Yeah.
I think she's less ugly in the film than she is described in the book.
I don't know if you could possibly find someone that ugly in real life.
I agree. Yes, I agree. Because she's described as looking like a toad and big eyes, and like just the picture of her in the book is very unflattering.
A lot of references to her wide toady mouth throughout the book.
And in the movie, she's very kind of cute. Like, or in the movie, like, not cute, but like, you know.
She looks...
I don't know how to describe it, but anyways.
She looks like a little old lady who... Well, not old.
Not old,
She's
no,
middle, She looks like she goes to church.
Right. Yeah, she just looks vaguely... Like, if you just saw her without knowing anything about her, she just looks vaguely pleasant. She doesn't look... other than how she dresses. Like, she doesn't look like you know what I mean? Except from how her performance, because you can even see... her fake smile, you know, and like she does and that's what she does such a good job as, and that what the movie nails is just the portrayal of the character is like spot on. Her voice, the high pitched, like sort of baby talking,
the little stupid giggle,
and the little cough she does to interrupt people so that she can talk.
And then her progress for the sake of progress
during
speech.
the opening dinner, she gives her speech about progress for the sake of progress must be.
Another thing that is very clearly a nod to a real life political.
Yeah. And we both have this one. We both wrote it separate ways. Mine is Luna, period, just Luna. And yours is Luna, 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 all capitals.
Well, we both felt very strongly about it.
Yeah.
She did a really good job.
She's perfect. She's exactly... And this is... I think I mentioned in the prequel that she may be the best casting in all of the movies, and J.K. Rowling agrees with me. I saw two things. One, it is in the same interview. She was talking to the director of the film. One, she said that Luna is the only character from the movies that has influenced how she writes the character, wrote the character in the books. She says and that has, when she thinks of Luna, she thinks of Ivana Lynch's portrayal of Luna.
It's like actor goals.
Right. Also, way super interesting. Somebody had been writing when they found out somebody had been writing J.K. Rowling letters. She said they'd been getting letters from this girl who said, I am Luna. Like, I'm just like her, blah, blah, blah. Like, who had read the books and was like obsessed with Luna or read the 5th book and was like obsessed with her. And had been writing J.K. for months or something, like several letters over the course of a couple months. And then they did this audition where they auditioned like 12,000 girls or whatever. It was
like an open audition, wasn't it?
And they auditioned to over 10,000 actresses for the role. And the one who ended up getting, they came to J.K. Rowling and said, we have our Luna, it's Ivana Lynch. And she goes, Ivana Lynch? And it was the girl who had been writing her letters.
Crazy.
Saying like, I am Luna. This character is me.
That's like the most insane thing.
Yeah, I thought that was wild. I thought the Umbridge versus the Harry scene in the first Defense Against the Dark Arts class, where we're kind of introduced to Umbridge a little bit, and Harry blows up at her. It was like the dialogue's like ripped word for word pretty much from the book, and it's pretty spot on.
And then her office.
Yeah, with all the cat plates and the pink everywhere and everything.
And the way that her evil blood quill works.
Yes. She's a straight up sadist.
Yeah.
Like, she's straight evil in this.
No, she is. She gets off on causing pain.
Yeah. She's,
like, absolutely.
Yeah. And the quill, it's kind of exactly how you imagine and how that works with the detention. I think Sirius's head in this one, when he shows up in the fire, looks a lot closer to what I imagine.
Yeah, it's definitely way better than what
the
they
Coles
did in
thing.
the first.
It's still not. I mean, I still just imagine their head in the fire,
their head poking out of the flames.
but it's closer this time, and it also
better.
doesn't. He also doesn't do the weird like, because he's not like in the coals anymore, so it's not he doesn't have that weird voice inflection in this one, which I thought was better.
And thank God.
Yeah. And we talked about it a little bit, but the conversation after Cho kisses Harry,
with Ron and
Hermione is pretty good. Although they don't have Ron do a fist pump like he does in the book, which I thought would have been fun.
I enjoyed the DA lessons.
Yeah, the montage of the DA lessons with Harry kind of going around and teaching everybody. Yeah, that was good. That was good. And we get lots of different. We actually see them do a fair number of different spells and that sort of thing. This is. We talked about the tapestry at the Black Estate. It looks pretty cool in the movie, and kind of how I imagined it. Although I would imagine the pictures to be smaller. Yeah. Because there would be more of them. Because, like, as we said, everybody's interrelated, so there's like tons of different family, like kind of on there. But apart from that, I think it looks really cool. And then this one, the movie nails the fact that Snape gives Harry about as much instruction in in the movie, Snape gives Harry about as much instruction in how to do occlumency as he does in the book, which is none. Yeah.
Oh my God, it frustrates me so much.
Yeah.
Like, Snape is a bad teacher.
Oh, he's terrible.
Like, he's not a good teacher. Like, you can't just tell somebody to do something. You have to teach them.
Yeah. Literally, he just goes, hey, close your mind. I'm going to try to get into your mind. Don't let me.
And, like, I don't know now if I know how to close my mind. Like, how would you know at 15?
No. Here's the thing. I haven't even done much. I've done a little bit of sort of,
like meditation.
Meditation and, mindfulness. And you absolutely, like, so you can tell somebody, okay, meditate. All you want to do is you want to focus on, you want to try to sit and relax and focus on clearing your mind. If you just tell somebody clear their mind, that is so
nothing.
useless.
It's
it
useless.
means nothing. But when you listen and read about how to actually meditate and how to practice mindfulness, the people who are good at teaching it have a very specific sort of process about how you go. It's not just like clear your mind, which is kind of how Snape is teaching occlumency. Because he literally says like clear your mind. It's like, okay, you're gonna sit, you're gonna focus on your breathing, and then as you do that, you're gonna try to focus on a little thing like your breath, and then you go from there, and you sort of as you feel a thought kind of come into your brain, focus on it, think about it, and then try to push it aside. You go through this process of how you kind of clear. Terrible teacher in this in the instance of occlumency, which fits in with his character.
No, because when somebody tells me to clear my mind, I picture a blank piece of paper.
Yeah.
But like lined paper, so it's not even clear.
I think that's a very writerly thing. Clear your mind, empty paper. Something I haven't written yet. The "come quietly" line is for the faults of that scene where they confront Dumbledore and he escapes. It's a great line in the book and in the movie, and it's there, and it's word for word there in the movie. Where it appears you're operating under the false pretense that I'm going to, what's the phrase? Come quietly or something like that. I have no intention of doing so. This is a badass line.
Yes. The Hall of Prophecies, I totally agree that it is dated CG. Yeah. I do like the look of it generally. It
looks cool.
Yeah, it's pretty much how I imagined it.
Yeah, I agree. Big, dark, creepy hall, giant. Yeah, I agree. It looks in the
Although, awful lot of prophecies for a world in which true seers are supposedly
super rare. That's the only thing. I would only say that is that I don't imagine it to be quite so grand. I didn't imagine it to be quite so like 100 feet tall ceilings with that literally hundreds of thousands of prophecies.
Oh, maybe they just like never throw them out.
Yeah, this could be from all the way through time. Yeah. Yeah. Bellatrix Lestrange, apart from some of the writing issues with and cutting like some of her more cruel moments from the book and the whole weird part where she whimpers, the portrayal and it's what's her name?
It's Helena Bonham Carter.
She's great. Yeah. And she plays that.
She does crazy real good.
She does that real well. It's not really a stretch for her. Well, I don't mean that in terms of her as an actress. I mean from her other roles. It's not exactly a stretch from other stuff she's done. But she does a great job at it. So and the look is kind of exactly the sort of deep set dark eyes, and she's pretty but like creepy, like pretty, like And then finally for me. I thought the book or the movie nailed the Luna and Harry moment at the end, and they even added a line. I think, at least I don't remember it from the book, where Luna says to him, "Things we lose have a way of coming back to us in the end." Well, she says, "My mom always told me things we lose have a way of coming back to us in the end." That was a really nice moment, especially as it relates to Sirius having just lost, or Harry having just lost Sirius. And it was a good addition.
It's a nice moment.
And I just think their interaction's really great. And I loved it in the book and I liked it in the movie. But I'm a Harry and Luna shipper. Get out of here, Jenny. So
hey.
I have no problem with Jenny. She's fine. Well, in the book, she's milquetoast at best in the movies.
Yeah.
But
I'm a Luna Jenny shipper. So
fair enough. I can get on board with that. All right, Muggle Questions, Part 4.
The whole disappearance of Dumbledore with Fawkes the Phoenix, did the book explain how that happened? And the answer to this very well may be magic.
Magic is the answer to that question because Dumbledore is a boss.
Yep, pretty much. In the book, it's slightly different. He uses a spell first to sort of, as we mentioned, knock out everybody in the room other than the kids or the people on his side, and then he talks to everybody, and then he grabs Fawkes and flies away. They kind of combine that all into one action in the movie, which it looks cool, it's fine, but it's just magic.
Do we know what happens to Umbridge after the centaurs take her away in a very creepily fashion?
All right, so here's where things get real dark, boys and girls.
Yeah.
We're never explicitly told what happens to Umbridge with the centaurs. There is a scene at the very end where she's in the hospital wing and she's like traumatized.
Yeah, and because Dumbledore walks into the forest and saves her.
Yeah.
It's not in the movie. But we don't know for sure.
So we don't know for sure, but as per Greek mythology, centaurs have something of a reputation for carrying women off and ravaging them.
Yeah.
So
there's
that implication.
I would feel like the implication in the book is more of that they took her to like stand trial for insolence or whatever, for like insulting them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Centaur trial.
That's kind of the feeling you get, but also in the movie they don't say anything, right. So in the book they're very clearly like offended by her like insulting them, and you know what I mean, they're like they're talking to her and there's like a back and forth and they're like, how dare you, but
okay, they said the prophecy so fast and they only said it like twice. Can you reiterate what the prophecy is? I don't have the luxury of going back and I guess I could rewind, but I'm lazy.
So the whole prophecy isn't in the movie. We just hear a glimpse of it. That's also not when we hear it in the book. In the book, it smashes and nobody hears it.
Yes.
Nobody hears it. But since it was told to Dumbledore, he has a memory of it and shows Harry the memory in the pensive.
So Harry is able to hear it in its entirety. Later.
After he gets back to Hogwarts. Here it is in its entirety. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the 7th month dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal. But he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord will be born as the 7th month dies. So that's the whole thing.
Yes.
Also, the movie doesn't, I can't believe we left out of Better in the Book, Neville.
To be fair, we did cover a lot in Better in the Book.
But that's a big one.
That is a big one.
Holy shit, how did we miss that?
So part of what's important about the prophecy is that it could have been indicating Neville.
It could have been Harry or Neville, because they were both born at the same time.
Like around the same time at the end of July.
And they both had parents
who defied Voldemort.
Yeah, 3 times apparently.
Yeah.
And, but part of it that makes, the reason it is Harry now is that the line about Voldemort will mark him as his equal.
Yes.
Voldemort thought it was Harry, and tried to kill him because Voldemort didn't have the whole prophecy. And that's, I think we have a question about it here in a second. Yes. So here's your second question.
Why was it so important that Voldemort have the prophecy? Why was that such a big deal for all the Death Eaters and Voldemort to grab it?
When Voldemort heard about the prophecy, he didn't hear all of it.
Yeah.
So now he wants it to see if there's any more information that he needs, because he doesn't understand what happened. And like he thinks if he gets this prophecy, he'll be able to put together the pieces and figure out what caused his downfall. You know, what else in this prophecy might I be able to use? But he didn't hear the part in the prophecy about he will mark him as his equal. So that's...
Yeah, so he has no idea he picked his poison.
Yeah. He could have picked Neville. Could have been dealing with Neville right now.
He could have picked nobody.
He could have picked nobody. Yeah, that's the other thing. He doesn't know that him doing that was part of what created this.
Yeah, I mean, that's what set it in motion.
Yeah, exactly. So it is Harry. It's not Neville anymore, but it could have been Neville. So that's another thing that the movie just completely glosses over.
In the big fight scene at the climactic part of the movie, what is the archway? What was that?
Unclear.
Yeah.
To me, there's an implication that it's some kind of like gateway to the afterlife. I mean, they do call it the Veil.
Yeah, and it's the Death Room.
Yeah.
Is what that room is referred to by Dumbledore and Harry and a couple other people later, is that it's the Death Room. I always just sort of saw it as a visual metaphor for death.
Yeah.
I mean, passing through the veil beyond the veil, like that's, a pretty, the veil is, that's a pretty common symbolism or, analogy, but whatever. Metaphor for death or dying and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's always just how I kind of saw it, and sort of like, it's like a physical manifestation of that somehow that they found, probably some ancient thing that they're studying and maybe as a way to talk to people who are dead, because you hear voices behind it, which I don't know how much of that we get in the movie, but Harry and Luna both specifically can hear voices on the other side of the veil. Yes. She does mention that in the conversation.
Yeah, so possibly something similar to the Thestrals, like maybe you had to have witnessed death to be able to hear the voices.
Who knows?
And we don't ever learn any more about that.
Which is kind of interesting, because I kind of definitely, people speculated that was going to be an important thing and somehow.
But it never comes back.
Never comes back, which is kind of disappointing, but I get it.
At the end of the movie, are we supposed to believe that those were Luna's shoes hanging in the archway? And then again, the Nargles did that. That was that.
Yes, those are Luna's shoes.
Yeah.
Trevor's really hung up on the Nargles.
Yeah, really interested in the Nargles. Not the Nargles, Trevor. It was other students. In the book, it's more. I think she says this in the movie. But students, because they pick on her because she's different. Yeah. And they take her stuff and hide it and whatever. And so that's what she's doing. She's trying to find it because she's like. Normally, she's like, I don't mind, but it's the last day, so I kind of need my stuff back. So it's other students were being jerks and put her shoes up there. And Harry ends up in the books, mentions how he kind of feels bad for her, that, she gets picked on and that sort of thing. So, all right. We got a few general notes that we're going to wrap this up with before we hit our final verdict. Not that you're sticking around for the final verdict. It's the rest of it. The final verdict's known already.
Yeah, we don't need a prophecy for that one. So I had this thought when I started rereading this book. So Harry is a Horcrux, which, as we learn in following books, means that Voldemort put part of his soul into Harry, not intentionally, but doesn't really matter. So my question then is, if a Dementor was successful in kissing Harry, what would happen?
I would think that it would destroy that Horcrux.
You think so?
I would think that would be one of the ways you could destroy a Horcrux, if it's
in a person
and a Dementor is involved.
Because that would make sense. I feel like one of two things would happen. Either it would destroy the Horcrux, like you said, or it would suck out Harry's soul and he would just be like a partial Voldemort.
It's true. Possible. Not sure.
I don't know. Maybe I'll tweet JK.
Yeah, ask her about that. That's a good question.
I want to know.
I thought that was a fun question. In this book, they specifically tell when they come to rescue Harry from the Dursleys, they say, you're too young to apparate, so we're going to take brooms to fly back. But in literally the next book, he side-by-side apparates everywhere with Dumbledore.
Yes.
And eventually they do it with Hermione.
Yes.
So that's just like an obvious retcon,
Yeah, to
right?
me that seems like a pretty, like, she was like, oh, I'm just going to have them be able to do this thing.
Yeah, she was like, I need Dumbledore and Harry to be able to get places quickly.
Yeah.
That aren't, and not just fly by broom. So, and it would make more sense if, like, Dumbledore could do it, but then Hermione can do it as well.
Right.
So it's like, that was just like a convenience type of thing. So I thought that was interesting, because, yeah, they specifically, you're too young to apparate, and we can't take you with us, I guess, because we don't know about that yet. Yeah. Arthur Weasley mentions in the book, he mentions plumbles because he doesn't know what plumbers are. But wizards have pipes. Why don't they know it? Why don't they have plumbers?
Maybe
even if they're magic plumbers.
I don't know.
That's a weird one to me.
Maybe they just don't call them plumbers. Maybe
What would they call them?
I don't know.
They use other regular words. Most of their language is like normal words. Why is plumber a weird one? Even if they use magic to do it, they're still plumbers. They have pipes. They call it plumbing. Don't they? Like, what do they call it if they don't call it plumbing? Do they just call it, like, the pipes?
These are all really good questions.
I'm just saying. It doesn't make any sense. I was really confused by that. Oh, it's really weird to me.
Is there a medieval term for plumbing that we don't know about? Maybe they call it that.
Maybe. Also, do British people never bathe?
Maybe wizards never bathe because they don't have plumbing.
Because Harry's getting ready for his trial. Mrs. Weasley comes in and goes, Harry, we're going to wash your hair for the trial tomorrow. And I'm like, do you not do that at least every couple days? Or like, what is happening?
Okay, now, I want to be fair here, he is 15.
Okay,
and
fair
sometimes
enough.
Teenagers have an issue with that.
Fair enough. I guess that's it, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. It just was weird to me. I was like, when I was a teenager, I showered every day, every morning before school. So I thought that was weird, but maybe I was weird. Also, and they dropped the prefect storyline, but they're all super proud of Ron for being made a prefect. And I did some fucking math to shit on Ron's dreams. Or Ron's accomplishments. They're like, oh my god, you're a prefect. That's everybody in the family. Discounting Fred and George. But here's the thing. There's a boy and a girl prefect for every house in the 5th year. We know from what we can kind of gather, there are 6 boys in Gryffindor.
There's Harry, Ron, Neville,
Dean and Seamus.
Dean and Seamus.
So there's 5.
There's 5.
There's 5 boys in Gryffindor. We'll assume in girls it's Hermione, Parvati, Lavender, Katie, or no, not whoever Lavender's friend is. Or no, it's Lavender and Parvati are the friends. So there's.
Do we not know any other?
We might not know any other. We might just know Hermione, Lavender, Parvati. We might just know the 3. I feel like there's at least one more.
Probably.
So let's say there's 5.
Yeah, let's say there's 5 each.
So and let's say that's the same for every house, and each house has one. It's a 1 in 5 chance of being the prefect.
Yeah,
that is pretty good odds. It is not like some outlandish.
Also, Dumbledore. I feel like the obvious answer to this was to not make either Harry or Ron a prefect.
Yeah.
Like, why not Dean?
Dean Thomas should have absolutely been the prefect.
I will go to bat for Dean Thomas right now. Dean Thomas should have been a prefect.
Dean Thomas absolutely should have been the prefect. But also, it's just so silly to me. They're like, oh my god, it's like, 1 in 5 chance, man. 1 in 5 chance.
And like 3 of the people you were up against were Harry Potter, who causes trouble all the time.
Neville.
And Seamus, who's always setting things on fire.
Yeah. You really had, you were competing against Dean. You beat Dean, probably because racism. Like,
so, way to fucking go, Ron.
Oh, it's so silly.
So in the book, when we first meet Umbridge at Hogwarts, there's a mention that she's wearing an Alice band, which I had to look up.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
It's a headband. It's like a British term for a headband.
Okay.
Derived from Alice in Wonderland.
Interesting.
What I thought was interesting was that when I looked it up, and maybe if we have any listeners in England, they can tell us this. They can confirm this for me or deny it. It seems like they have kind of a negative connotation. Like a goody two-shoes type of a thing.
I can see that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Also, another thing I noticed in this book, Harry makes an offhand comment. He says, "There's the bell." There are bells at Hogwarts.
Yeah, I always thought that was weird.
What
are
bells?
they? Are they like burp, like normal school bells, or are they like? Is it like the Westminster or like the?
Is it like the big bells, or is it like a ringing bell?
I would imagine it's like Big Ben.
But also,
Boom, boom, boom. Like
there's a
Westminster.
staff room.
Yeah.
It's so mundane, it's almost weird. But also, I want to know about the teacher's lounge at Hogwarts.
It's probably just like your fascination with this is delightful, but to me it just seems like it would just be like any other room, like there's some chairs and stuff.
Okay, and maybe I'm not fully understanding this because I've never been to boarding school, and that's like not a thing that's ingrained in our culture.
Yeah.
But the teachers all live there.
Oh yeah,
like they
that's
all
true.
have their own living quarters.
Yeah, but they just have a room where they go where they go work together, or
chill and drink wizard coffee in between classes.
I would think that like if they need to like talk about stuff, like just like a boardroom type of like a meeting room, it kind of makes sense.
It's still like it's so mundane to me.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Like it's so ordinary.
Yeah,
to have bells and a teacher's lounge.
I get it. The bells one, I agree. It's weird. It's strange. Just you never hear it in the movie, and I just want to know what the bell at Hogwarts sounds like. Is a little thing random in the movie. Luna has a hunk of raw meat in her purse. Weird,
right? Like, does she just have it, or are we supposed to believe that she like brought it there specifically for the festival?
You would think she did, but why did she bring it fruit first? I don't know. I mean, I know visually because she's talking about how things are different. Like she's like, "Oh, it looks like a horse. Give it an apple," but nope. Because she has some line about how being different and whatever. But yeah, she just has raw meat in her purse.
Maybe it's for Nargles.
Yeah, could be.
Maybe it keeps the Nargles away.
Could be.
I don't know. So there is a tiny subplot in the book about Hermione knitting and leaving out hats for the house elves to trick them into being set free. Which means that my question that I raised when we were reading Chamber of Secrets, I don't remember if we actually talked about it on here, but I raised this question, and now it still stands. Can house elves do laundry?
I don't know. Because apparently if they accidentally pick up these...
Yeah,
at least Hermione thinks. Oh, no, they do, because Dobby is taking them.
And he says that all of the other house elves don't want to clean Gryffindor Tower because they're offended by it.
Yeah.
So can house elves do laundry? It would appear not.
Okay, but they say that they're offended by it, but it doesn't necessarily specifically say that they would be set free, just that they are offended by the fact that she's leaving these clothes out. As like and trying to trick them, basically.
Yeah, I guess maybe this is another thing.
It's another thing you gotta tweet.
JK, because I need to know. Because here's the thing. Not that I endorse indentured servitude. I absolutely do not. But if you were going to have an indentured servant, you would want them to do laundry.
Yeah,
laundry's the worst thing.
It's up there. It's very high on the list of bad, annoying things you have to do around the house. So yeah.
But also, like, how much cleaning do house elves actually do? Wizards have cleaning spells. Why would you need a house elf to, like, manually clean your house?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I'm on board with all of your questions here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had thoughts.
No, I agree. I'm
this.
agreeing with all these.
All right. So another thing that I noticed. So in this book, we get Hermione starting to say Voldemort.
Yeah,
whereas
and it's like
previously she's always said you know who.
Yeah, and it's been like it's like a turning point in the book for Harry of like.
Yeah.
With his relationship with her, he knows she's serious because she's saying Voldemort or whatever.
But here's the thing. It doesn't really make any sense for Hermione to be so afraid of saying Voldemort. I
agree.
Because that's a cultural thing that would come from being raised in the wizarding world, which she wasn't.
No.
And like she could read books and realize that everyone calls him you know who, but why would she be so afraid of the name?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't make any sense because it's a thing where you grow up and all your parents and all your family and all your friends everybody says you know who.
Yeah.
Sure. But even if you're reading a book, it would be one thing if she said it to like fit in or like to be polite, but it's very explicit in the book that she like has a hard time saying Voldemort, and she like has to like, steady herself to say it, kind of. And that doesn't make any sense. Doesn't really make any sense. She's also smarter than that. Like, she's not superstitious. Like, I think, and I have this complaint overall with the books. I think it would have been really interesting and cool to have a couple Slytherin in the DA.
It would have.
In Dumbledore's army. Like, they can't all be awful. That's not how they're described. Like, and it's not how I feel like JK would necessarily has them written. Well, they, as portrayed in the books, the only ones we ever meet are pretty much, except for later. I think in the 7th book, there is a slight mention that there are some Slytherin who stay and fight with
the rest
of the
I
school,
don't remember.
if I remember correctly. But it would have been one of those moments, and we talked about this at one point, of to have a few Slytherin who aren't awful.
It is a weakness of the books in general, and it does kind of undermine some of the thematic
elements of unity and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, have a couple of them that are like, want to be in the DA.
Okay, so the Quidditch subplot got cut, which means that the Weasley is Our King song also got cut, which is the song that the Slytherins made up to to unnerve Ron as he was playing Quidditch. But there's one point in the book where Malfoy says that they wanted to add verses about Ron's mother to the song, but they couldn't find rhymes for ugly and fat. Now, ugly I can buy, but really, Malfoy, you couldn't think of a rhyme for fat?
Yeah.
You couldn't think of a rhyme for fat? So maybe Hogwarts does need some educational reform.
Apparently. Well,
Malfoy appears to be barely literate.
They don't take English.
Well, yeah.
They don't take any of the normal classes that he would need as a human being to live in the world. They don't take writing. They don't take...
That education stops at 11.
Yeah. So we find out in this... I don't remember if it's in the book, maybe, but in the movie, they show Luna's Patronus, and it is a wild rabbit.
Yes,
just like mine. So there's that. Apparently, it's a Ravenclaw thing. Also, in the movie, this isn't a thing because McGonagall is in the scene where Dumbledore runs away and escapes and is confronted and runs away. In the movie, McGonagall's not there. In the book, McGonagall's there, and she pulls out her wand because they say, like, really, Dumbledore, you against seven, like, you against me, Umbridge, Fudge, Shacklebolt, like, everybody there or whatever. And McGonagall goes, well, he won't be alone, and pulls out her wand, and Dumbledore was like, no, I would be. All right, I will be. But after this whole thing goes down and Dumbledore runs away, like, why does Umbridge just let McGonagall stay? She actively was like, I'm gonna fight you with Dumbledore.
Right, and
like,
you'd think that would be one of the first things Umbridge would do.
Any excuse to get rid of McGonagall.
Because
any excuse.
Once Dumbledore's gone, she is the number one threat to Umbridge.
Yeah, and it's not like Umbridge has any sort of... She has the flimsiest possible excuse she can find. It doesn't matter. Like, and she said, you were... When Dumbledore escaped, you were there ready to fight for him. You're out of here. Like, why would she let her stay? It doesn't make any sense. You can add this to the Snape isn't a good guy pile in his overly celebrated post-books. He stops giving Harry occlumency lessons. We talked about it, but he's so super embarrassed.
He does a lot of awfulness during those lessons. Yeah. But, like, for real, dude, you're a grown-ass adult. Yeah. Suck it up. Yeah. Keep doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And again, he comes off way better in the movies than he does in the books. On rewatching and rereading, I'm much more like, screw you in the books. Yeah. In the movie, he doesn't have as much screen time, and so we don't get to see him be as vile as he is in the books. They make a comment about this in the book when they get to the Ministry at the end, and they show up, and Harry's like, there's no security here. Because he thinks they go through the security desk, but the security's not there. Why is there zero security at the Ministry at night? They just completely empty out the most important governmental building, the only governmental building that they have that we know of.
The arrogance of wizards.
Yeah, it's like, what? What? Okay, there's no security. That was interesting. Harry really wants to walk through the archway that we talked about in the death room. He talks to him, and he says he feels this weird desire to just walk through the archway,
a pull towards it,
sort of this unnatural pull. And I thought there's some interesting implications there, since we do think it kind of is symbolic of death, obviously, and sort of dying and that sort of thing, and that he can hear the voices. And I'm wondering if there aren't some implications there, especially with what we know of Voldemort being in sort of everything he's dealing with, some sort of vague allusions to like suicidal
Yeah.
To some extent.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's never touched on again, really. It's never... I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. It's a very specific, pointed line to say he had this strange desire. And he seems to be the only... Not the only. I guess a couple of... Other people are staring at it. Mm-hmm. But he kind of starts walking up to it. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. And this is silly and weird, and it's not in the movie. But one of the Death Eaters in the final battle uses a... I can't remember what it's called, but the dancing leg jinx on Neville. To where Neville's legs just dance constantly and he can't stop. And I'm like
the one Death Eater who was uncomfortable fighting children.
Yeah. It's like, what is that? You're a Death Eater and you're like, you know what? All right. They're all rest of them are like shooting Avada Kedavras at him and like kill, whatever. And he's like, you're gonna dance for hours. What is that? It's such a weird. It just made me laugh. I'm like, why would you do that? That's so strange.
Speaking of Neville, in the final battle, and I've seen speculation about this before, so this is not a unique idea that I came up with. But he specifically says that he was using his dad's old wand. Yeah. So possibly why he wasn't very good at magic. Yeah. Leading up to, I mean, really for these first 5 books.
Yeah, although he does get a lot better in this one.
Yeah, he does.
With that wand. But yeah.
As per wizard lore, the wand chooses the wizard. Yeah. So if you're not using a wand specifically meant for you, your magic isn't going to be as good.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because and he ends up losing it. It breaks or...
Yeah, it breaks.
Yeah, in this one.
So my very final thought here...
We're going to go out on this one.
I guess it was just me because I brought it up to you and you didn't feel the same way about it that I did. I thought seeing Voldemort's bare arms was really weird
in the final duel where
he holds his wand up over his head and you see the entirety of his pale ass bare arms, and I felt like I was seeing something that I wasn't supposed to. I was very uncomfortable with seeing Voldemort's bare arms.
This did nothing for me. I
was very uncomfortable and unnerved by it. I didn't like it.
I got nothing. I'll just, yep, sure.
No opinions on Voldemort's arms.
That one.
Okay.
Didn't strike me in any way whatsoever. Final verdict.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first. Verdict afterward.
I mean, it's the book.
Yeah, it's the book. It's way the book. Again, yeah.
I said this about Goblet of Fire. I'm going to say it again, possibly even more for this one. I could not imagine following this movie not having read the book.
No, I agree. Not at all. It's. I mean, I could imagine watching it, and we kind of talked about this, and going, yeah, I enjoyed that. Yeah. That was good. I kind of got generally what happened. But I would be, if I thought about it and started thinking, I would have so many questions. Yeah. I'm like, what?
Yeah. If you hadn't read the books, you absolutely couldn't watch this and think critically about it in any way.
No. Yeah. Or you would have to have somebody who had read the books. And maybe that's what they're counting on. Maybe. I'm sure that's part of what they're counting on is that they can leave some of that stuff out because everybody knows somebody who read the books and will be happy to give you all the, you know what I mean? We'll be more than happy to share all the information that you didn't get. So I would imagine that's part of it.
Yeah. Also, at this point, everything was on the internet.
Yeah. You can just look it up. Yeah, so I'm sure that's part of it, but yeah, it is kind of how none of this makes sense without.
And apparently, you can get really hung up on Nargles.
Yeah,
if you haven't read the books,
I would never have thought of the Nargles, but Trevor had some questions about Nargles. All right, our next episode is going to be.
We're going to do our Halloween episode. And it's going to be a short story because we've got to start reading Half-Blood Prince. So we're going to be doing The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which I've never actually read.
I've never seen or read. So
I know the story.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not a unique story. We'll talk about that. But we're going to do that, and we are going to watch
the Johnny Depp one, right?
Depp movie. And I'm already very excited about it because the tagline is "Heads will roll."
Woo! Puns on puns.
Already really just super stoked about that.
Cool. In the meantime, if you could do us a favor and rate, review us on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you download and listen to our fine podcast, we really appreciate that. Also, check us out on all the social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads, Reddit. We have a subreddit, r/thisfilmislit. All those places you can find us. Katie posts fun memes and engagement stuff. So check us out on all those platforms. Rate and review us, like I said. And until next time, guys, gals, non-binary, and everybody else, keep watching movies, keep reading books. I did that backwards. Keep reading books, keep watching movies, and keep being awesome.
Unlike our cat.